Ladies and gentlemen, we do have the proper number of people in the hall. If we could grab our seats, we can let the festivities begin.
Good.
You really came.
I did. You didn't think I would? You look great.
Who doesn't look good coming back from
Sure, I love this. Right before town meeting, you do this trip. Always can. Good to see you.
Speak to the committee, speak for
Excellent.
here, if you want to speak as a citizen.
served.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 2019 version of Northborough's annual town meeting. If you happen to be in the wrong year, or maybe the wrong town, this is your chance to escape. I've been told that we do have a quorum. For those of you not familiar with that term, quorum means that we must have 100 registered voters in the hall. Once we have that number, then we can verify that number and begin the meeting. It may continue, and if that number falls below 100, it will continue unless the quorum is questioned. And then we have a vote, and we will adjourn the meeting for the evening and move on to another day to continue the meeting. We will go through each article until all articles have been presented and voted upon, or until we reach the hour of 11 p.m. The article on the floor will be completed. The article that's on the floor at 11 p.m. will be completed before adjournment. Now I ask that we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I ask that you remain standing. Look, some of us need the exercise, okay? I would like to have a moment of silence for those of our community that we lost since we were last together. Thank you. You may be seated. For real this time, okay? A few opening comments, not many. This meeting is a culmination of many meetings and many hours of hard work by members of the administration, boards, committees, and commissions. This is your meeting, and my job is to make sure we go through the articles in the warrant in an orderly fashion, and that debate and discussion is fair and balanced. I ask, if you have not already done so, please silence your phones, or your tax bill will be doubled. Please wait to be recognized before speaking from the floor, and there are microphones in the aisles and up front. I ask that you please use the microphone so everyone can hear what you're saying. I'll add this: we may not always agree on every subject, but it's important to remember that we all live in the same community, and we will continue to do so after the meeting. So let's have fun, kids. For those of you that are new to town meeting, there's a good resource put together by the Office of the Secretary of the Commonwealth, and I believe it is still available at the Northborough website to talk a little bit about what is this town meeting that everyone talks about and how does it work. So if you haven't seen that and you're new to the concept, feel free. If you've been around for a while and you still want to see it, we'll let you do that too. At this time, I'll ask, are there any people here tonight who are at their first town meeting? Congratulations. Thank you. Now, for those of you that are not familiar, there's a voting process. We have these magic cards that are made on special paper and printed with special ink. They cannot be duplicated in any way, shape, or form. Okay? When we vote, I will ask two things. I'll ask, firstly, all those in favor, please raise your cards. And you raise your cards. You keep your cards up. In the unlikely event that it isn't a clear-cut number that I can see, I will ask our tellers, these wonderful people who go around telling you either to put your hand down or keep your hand up, about our votes. And we'll get the results and let people know what's happening. Let's do a practice vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed? Oh, of course, of course. Everyone's got a hang of it, right? I want to just let you know who these people are in the front at this table. We have our Financial Planning Committee at the far end. Closer to the center, we have our Appropriations Committee, our Board of Selectmen, and our administration. The town administrator, we have town council, and we have the assistant town administrator as well. And finance director. Oh, that's right, the guy who counts the beans. If there are no questions, I will now turn it over to the Board of Selectmen. I believe you have some announcements to make.
Hello. Am I on? Okay. No?
Not, you're not on.
Tech support.
Now? Okay, I'm gonna go back to the table.
You can use the other one too, I think that'll work, but let me.
Kathy, down, please.
Dawn, use this.
Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2.
It's taped, she can't pick it up. Really?
There we go. Okay, at this time, the Board of Selectmen always recognize the people that have served on boards and commissions and spent time serving the town of Northborough and have chosen not to serve it anymore and are getting off their commission or their board. There's so many people that make the town of Northborough work that it's really nice when we have all these volunteers. And we urge you all to get involved. On our website, there's always openings available. So at this time, I'd like to recognize the Council on Aging, Anthony Pini, who served for 5 years. If you'd come down and get your plaque, if you're here. On the Community Affairs Committee, we had 3 people who've chosen not to serve. We have Deborah Ballard for 4 years, Amy Rogers for 7 years, and Kara McCormick for 9 years. If any of those people are here. On the Cultural Council, we have Scott Nolan, who served for 3 years. On the Earthwork Board, we have Anthony Zeiton, 9 years. On the Historic District Commission, Amy Jo White for 7 years and Stephanie Stockman for 9 years. On the Housing Authority, we have Ray Reynolds for 16 years. The Board of Library Trustees, we have Robert Badcock III for 3 years, Jack Sharp for 5 years, Laura Helwig for 11 years, and Ralph Parenti for 15 years. Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee and Trustees of Special Benevolent Funds, Peter Brockman for 5 years. On the Personnel Board, we have Susan Ledoux for 16 years. Board of Selectmen, we were all lucky to serve with Bill Pantazis for 12 years. And on the Youth Commission, Lori Mott for 10 years. Board of Selectmen also has one other special certificate of appreciation to hand out, and I'm going to call on the Town Administrator, John Kadir, to come up and do the favors.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a very special certificate here. This is for, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen and myself, to Christine Johnson, who I'm going to see if I can make her cry. That's my goal. The plaque reads, "For her dedicated service to the town of Northborough as school superintendent, and for the Northborough K-8 schools and the Northborough Southborough Regional High School, the invaluable experience, wisdom, and leadership in which she provided to our community during her tenure as school superintendent will always be remembered and appreciated." Dated Town of Northborough, April 22nd, 2019, and signed by the board. But I just want to make this comment to you folks. You know, every year you come to town meeting and we pass these budgets, and sometimes, and I hope tonight's one of them, it looks easy. One of the reasons why it looks easy is because of the collaboration and the professionalism and the great working relationship that we have in our community. And from my place as a town administrator over to the school department and the superintendent, I couldn't have asked for a better partner over these years, for somebody who would help work through issues, work through problems. And I would put the collaboration and the great working relationship that we have in Northborough against any other municipality in the Commonwealth. And you've all been the beneficiaries of that, and I know I certainly have been. So I just want to publicly say thank you, Christine, for everything you've done over the years.
That concludes our presentation.
Thank you.
I'm gonna be seeing you.
Now I'm required to read the return on the warrant that was posted. On behalf of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Worcester, to either the constables of the town of Northborough in said county, greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby commanded to warn and notify the legal voters of the town of Northborough to meet at Algonquin Regional High School, 79 Bartlett Street, in said town on Monday, April the 22nd day, in the year 2019, at 7:30 p.m., to act upon the following articles of the town warrant. Hereof fail not, and make due return of this warrant by your doings thereon to the town clerk at or before the time of the meeting aforesaid. Given under our hands at Northborough on Monday, this 25th day of March in the year 2019, and it's signed by the members of the Board of Selectmen. It's been attested by Andrew Dowd, the Northborough Town Clerk, and the return has been signed by the constable and attested also by Andrew Dowd. At this time, I will read the warrant in its entirety, article by article, word by word, letter by letter.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
move we waive the reading of the warrant in its entirety.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded that we waive the reading of the warrant. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed? Thank goodness it passed. With that being said, may I hear on Article 1, please?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to ratify the appointment by the moderator of Jerry Hickman as deputy moderator, as provided by Article 2, Section 2-2 of the Northborough Home Rule Charter.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded, and I am the presenter on this one. In the unlikely event that I'm unable to continue through the meeting, we have someone quite capable to be able to continue and make sure that the meeting continues to run. Jerry Hickman has been the deputy moderator now for 10. He's always had my back, and I look forward to it. So that's what Article 1 is all about. Any questions? Hearing no questions, this is what we're voting on. For Deputy Moderator, that we have Gerald Hickman fill that role. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Those opposed? Jerry, it was close. It was really close, but welcome aboard. Article 2.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
I move the town vote to authorize the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, to enter into a compensating balance agreement or agreements pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53F.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Presentation will be by Jason Little, our Finance Director.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. The compensating balance agreement article appears on the warrant every year, and if passed, this article will provide authorization for the town to enter into compensating balance agreements with banks. Compensating balance agreement is an agreement whereby the town would agree to maintain a certain balance in its bank account in exchange for receiving banking services. The interest earnings on the balance would then be retained by the bank, which compensate the bank for the services they've provided.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing no questions, what we're voting on is the motion. I move the town vote to authorize the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, to enter in a compensating balance agreement or agreements pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53F. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed? Article 2 passes. Article 3.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to pass over this article.
Second.
Motion's been made to pass over and seconded. May we ask the reason for the passover?
There are no late bills, so it would be appropriate to pass over this article.
Wow, I like that. So the motion's been made to pass over and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed? We have passed over Article 3. Article 4.
Mr. Moderator, I
Yes.
move the town vote to raise and appropriate and transfer from available funds the sum of $22,790,702 for town government as displayed in the warrant booklet, and to meet said appropriation, the following sums available for appropriation be transferred. Transfer from Cemetery Trust Fund income, $12,264. Transfer from cemetery sale of lots, $17,750. Transfer from debt exclusion premium reserve, $12,548. Transfer from DPW Transportation Fund, $1,999. Transfer from Conservation Commission fees, $6,741. Transfer from Fire Emergency Medical Services Revolving Fund, $325,252. Transfer from Recreation Revolving Fund, $166,662. Transfer from Animal Control Revolving Fund, $32,677. Transfer from Medicare Part D subsidy, $72,624. Transfer from PEG Access Cable-Related Fund, $303,566. Transfer from free cash, $500,000, for a total of $1,452,083, and that the sum of $21,338,619 be raised by taxation.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Kadera, could you do your presentation?
Thank you. I have a brief presentation tonight on the budget. I'm going to give you an overview of all of the budgets very briefly, and then I'm going to speak specifically to the general government budget or the non-school. Just sparing any suspense here, it's a level service budget, not to be confused with a level funded budget. Basically, we have increases that are allowable to give us the ability to maintain the services that we currently provide and that the residents enjoy. Our revenue projections have been very modest, despite the still improving economy, at least for now. we've seen very limited state aid and very limited new growth. In terms of the town's growth, one of the things that we are looking at is we're starting to approach maturity as a community, and we're approaching build-out. So we're starting to see that in our new growth numbers. As I said last year, the focus for us is really primarily on financial planning, capital plans, strategic plans, master plans. That's where we've spent the majority of this past year working on. As with every budget, it's about sustainability and balance. So just like every budget we've ever brought you, we are not bringing you something tonight that will put us out of balance in the short term or in the long term. So we're balancing both our budget needs for the upcoming fiscal year as well as our long-term needs in terms of capital, equipment, and taking care of our unfunded liabilities. Every December, all the boards and committees get together in Northborough for a State of the Union address. Basically, we cover all of the fiscal indicators, and we use the ICMA's best practices, so national best practices. But essentially, there's 4 standing goals that come out of that process. And it's a process that involves the Board of Selectmen, the Appropriations Committee, Financial Planning Committee, as well as the K-8 schools. So one of the reasons why I mentioned earlier that we have such great success at town meeting and why things go smoothly is because everybody's involved from the very beginning. And not only are they involved at the same point, but we have agreement on the information and the assumptions that go into our budget process, which eliminates a lot of the issues and the heartburn on the backside. But there's 4 standing goals. One is to protect the town's overall financial condition. That's not just short-term, but long-term as well. And it also means protecting our ability to provide the services that you all enjoy. It's nothing worse than having a balanced budget, but if all the residents are unhappy with the level of services that are being provided at that level. We're very happy to say that we've been able to provide a level service budget and keep and maintain those services where people want to see them. The second piece is we don't provide or put together budgets for you that are done with one-time gimmicks. We follow our comprehensive financial policies. These are the policies and the plans, those essentially the rules of engagement that everybody has agreed to in terms of how we conduct ourselves financially. So we're not using one-time revenues excessively in the budget. We're not funding recurring expenses with debt, anything like that. We also want to maintain Northborough as an affordable place to live and to operate a business. And that means we're coming to you tonight across all budgets asking for sufficient revenues or sufficient appropriations to maintain those services. There's nothing wild in this budget. There are no major service expansions or major new initiatives. We're continuing to provide the quality services that you've come to know and appreciate. The last standing goal is to make sure that any decision that we make in the current fiscal year, that it's done in the context of what it means for us in the long term. So you're going to have later on this evening under Article 20, we're going to be talking about a fire station building project. That fire station building project will have implications for our level of debt as well as our taxes. And so we want to make sure that there's always a thoughtfulness and a planning and a balance that goes along with that type of a request. In terms of our overall revenues, in Massachusetts, Northborough is just like most communities in that the majority of our resources come from local taxes. So 80% of everything that we use to fund police, fire, DPW, schools comes from local property taxes. State aid is about 8.8% of our budget. State aid used to be 13% of our budget years ago. But what's happened is over the years, our budgets go up about 3.5% to maintain services. State aid's gone up about 1 to 1.5%, so it hasn't kept pace. And so as a result, it's becoming a smaller and smaller piece of our budget pie. Local receipts are level funded, and free cash is basically one-time revenues that we allow in the budget. It's capped at $500,000. In terms of expenditures, roughly 58% of the budget is for schools. That's K-8, Algonquin, as well as Assabet, and about 21% is town operating. These ratios have remained very stable over the years. They haven't really changed much. In fact, I'm very proud of the one that says insurance and benefits at 13%. That has been maintained very stable for us. Our personnel costs represent about 75% of our overall budget, and our insurance and our benefits have been maintained relatively stable, and that's been through actively managing those costs. So again, the expenditure pie really hasn't changed much over the years. So in terms of the big picture, the general fund, now the general fund covers everything except water, sewer, and solid waste. So all the general government budgets, police, fire, DPW, as well as the schools. We're looking at about a 3.4% increase over fiscal 19. And again, as I said, that's a level service budget to maintain services. 2 points that I'd like to make is within that 3.4% is about $861,000 in one-time revenues that are being used to fund capital projects like equipment. That obviously is not being put into the base budget. It doesn't multiply and it doesn't grow. It's one-time revenues going to one-time expenditures. The other is $200,000 going into the stabilization fund. That money isn't being expended. It's essentially going into our rainy day fund. And we need to maintain our reserves between 8 and 10% of our operating budget in order for us to have an appropriate level of cushion should something bad happen, essentially. So when bond rating agencies look at us and they rate us in terms of our credit worthiness, they want to see that we have good financial reserves. So in order to maintain that ratio, we're adding $200,000 into the rainy day fund. But again, so it factors into that 3.4, but we're not expending it. In terms of the key budgets that you're going to hear about this evening, the Northborough K-8 schools is going up 2.73%. They've got some declining enrollment that's allowed them to make some cuts, particularly at the middle school level. General government, police, fire, DPW, that budget is going up 3.5%. Tonight you'll hear from Assabet Valley. This is our regional vocational school. We have an operating assessment as well as a debt assessment associated with our participation in that school. But the net impact of those two things, based on changing enrollments, is they're up about 10%. And that's just last year. You heard from the superintendent of Assabet, and I believe their assessment was down $135,000. It's just a matter of we went from 41 to 45 students at that school. It's enrollment driven. Probably the big, I wouldn't say, the big subject tonight, at least in terms of budget impact, and I don't want to speak for the superintendent. She'll discuss the Algonquin Regional High School budget. Overall, that high school budget is going up 3%. However, Northborough last year and this year has increased the number of students that are attending. And Southborough enrollment is actually decreasing. So despite the fact that the overall budget is up 3%, our assessment is going up 8.38%. And again, it's enrollment driven, has nothing to do with any service expansions or policy decisions made by the superintendent of the school committee. In fact, I can just tell you they've been wonderful partners, as I said at the start of this meeting, working with us to try to mitigate the impacts to the overall budget. But the bottom line is we send more kids, we're going to eat a larger portion of that budget, and that means our assessment is going up. So between those two things, overall our assessment's up $958,000. So that's the big picture. Shifting gears and talking about briefly just the general government budget. As I said, it's a level service budget. Right now, all of our collective bargaining agreements are expiring, so we're in negotiations with all the unions. We also have a class comp study going for the non-union folks. The anticipated costs of those contract settlements have been budgeted centrally, so they're part of the overall budget that's presented to you this evening. And in terms of expansions, we're adding one full-time position mid-year, and that's for a facilities manager. Right now, we have nobody overlooking all of the municipal facilities, and frankly, it takes up a great deal of my time and the assistant town administrator's time and the department head time. We really need somebody here with a special skill set to take care of our facilities. We're one of the few communities that do not have a full-time facilities manager, and so that's been requested in the budget. To fit it, it's only coming in at the midpoint. If you've been reading the papers and watching the news, China in 2008 decided to get out of the recycling business altogether. And it has thrown trash and recycling contracts into absolute disarray. So we are currently bidding out our trash and recycling contract, but we're anticipating a 15% increase just due to the fact that It's getting to the point now where it will cost us as much to get rid of a ton of recycling as it will to get rid of a ton of trash. Now, we hope that that's a short-term thing, and as the markets come back and they mature, and that void left by China gets filled by domestic markets as well as other markets in South America, that will come back. But right now, we're facing some significant increases, as are all municipalities. Retirement, you're going to hear me in the next slide talk to you about some of our unfunded liabilities. One is our retirement assessment for pension. That is going up 14%. That is our assessment from the Worcester Regional Retirement System. So we don't have a choice in this. That's what they're assessing us based on the full funding schedule. But it's $256,000 of our budget this year. So I'm going to end with this slide on a real positive note. Health insurance for fiscal 20 is going up 2%. Now, last year you heard me talk about health insurance as a budget buster, and it was a major budget driver for us last year. We were able to negotiate with all bargaining units, including the schools, thanks to the superintendent and the school committee. And we were able to accomplish plan design changes in carrier consolidation. So last year we wound up bringing what would have been a 15% increase down to about a 3.8% increase. This year we're looking at a 2%. Now, just to put this in perspective, I just told you a 3.5% increase for the general government portion of the budget is about $757,000. If health insurance goes up 10%, that's about $550,000 or $575,000. So if it goes up 15%, it pretty much eats up everything that we have to work with. Now, the bright spot for the town of Northborough, because everybody works together and because the employees working with the school department, working with general government, for the last 11 years, our health insurance budget, our budget, has gone up 3.15% on average. That is amazing, and I'll put that up against any community. And again, it happens because everybody's working together. This year, because of the changes we made last year, we've got a 2% budget increase, which is the only reason why the fiscal 20 budget for the general government side is coming in balanced at this point. The slide that I have up here is something I showed you for probably, I think, for the first time last year. This is our dashboard. I mentioned that all the boards and committees get together in December. And what we do when we get together in December is we set the table for the upcoming budget cycle. And what we do is we look backwards 10 years at our trends. And we forecast forward 5 years based on the assumptions that we glean from those trend analysis. And it's within that context that we all sit around the table, literally, and we say, we believe the budget can go up X percent. We believe that a 3.5% increase is what's sustainable and what we can maintain our services with. But if you look at this dashboard, we try to make it as easy as possible. Green is good, red is bad, and black is in the middle when we're watching it. So you see there's a lot of very favorable indicators that are on here. And again, these indicators are revenue indicators, expenditure indicators, capital indicators, debt indicators, and unfunded liabilities. Basically, when the credit rating agencies come in and they look at us, just like your own personal credit rating, they're looking at how much debt you're carrying, how well you've managed yourself. These are the indicators that they look at. So if we're not measuring and tracking these, then we're not going to know how we stack up. So as you look at these, there's 3 that are in red. One is state aid. We don't control state aid. I wish we did. But state aid has been going up 1 to 1.5% a year. So as I said, it used to be 13%, now it's 8.8% of our operating budget. It is continuing to become a smaller and smaller part of what we rely on to do this, to provide the services that we provide. So all we can do is plan accordingly, which we have, but we don't control state aid. The other 2 is the pension liability, and I just mentioned a moment ago that our pension assessment is going up 14%. We belong to the Worcester Regional Retirement System, so they assess us and we pay that assessment, and it's on a funding plan for 2035. There's nothing that the policy boards and committees behind me have to do with that funding plan. The retirement system determines what it is, they send us the bill, and we are on a funding plan. So the good news is there's a plan and it's being implemented. The bad news is that we have to pay it, and it does take a bite out of the current operating budget. The only other one that is unfavorable is our other post-employment benefits. That's the liability that we have for retiree health insurance, essentially. And Northborough is one of the few communities, a handful of communities in the state, that have a meaningful funding plan. We put $500,000 aside every year to fund, in the trust fund to fund that liability. This year, we're raising it to $550,000. We should be putting away more, but just like in your personal lives, when you look at how much you should save for retirement, you know you should probably be putting more aside. But what will your financial advisor tell you every day of the week? Put aside what you can and increase it as you can. And so that's what we've done, and it's a very responsible approach to dealing with that unfunded liability. As you look at the rest, the employee personnel costs and employee benefits have been stable. I have it listed as uncertain because health insurance, despite the fact for the last decade, we have very clearly managed it well. Any given year with that thing, when health insurance comes in at 10 or 15%, it will throw our whole budget process out of whack for that year until we find a way to resolve it. But by and large, when you look at these numbers, when you look at this dashboard indicator, the things that we control, the things that don't sneak up on you, that you manage yourselves well, we've done very good at. And there's only a couple of things that we don't control, but we plan for them and we watch them. So my favorite slide, what is the tax impact? We always come forward at the town meeting with a good faith estimate of what we think the tax impact is going to be. This year, that high school assessment going up considerably, about a little over $500,000 more than would have if the enrollments were level funded, or even rather. But we're looking at about a $361 increase on the average single-family home value of $460. We've also made in this estimate a good faith effort to escalate because home values are continuing to go up. So we assume that everybody's home values are going to go up 3% in the upcoming year, and that's what that estimate is based upon. In terms of the overall budget, we are living within the confines of Prop 2.5, so we're not looking at an override. In fact, Northborough has levy capacity because we have not taxed to the maximum of Prop 2.5 for many years. And so we have that levy capacity. When we have years like this where our enrollment at the high school is going up, we have to dip a little bit into that levy capacity. But we still are living below the limits of 2.5. In other words, what we could under the law be increasing taxes. And that's something that we strive for. We don't just automatically raise taxes to the maximum that we can under the law. We come to you with what we need. We come to you with what we need to sustain the level services. The core mission and services of the departments are being supported with this budget. Nobody's being reduced, and we're providing enough resources to maintain those services. We're dealing with our unfunded liabilities, as I'd mentioned, OPEB and our pension liabilities. By the way, I just want to make one comment. When people look at those pension liabilities, I want to make one comment to folks, because we're paying for past sins. If you were hired in the town of Northborough from 1996 or later, you are essentially fully funding your own pension. It's more of a forced savings program. That unfunded liability goes back when that pension system started a long time ago, and they weren't putting enough money aside into it. So all employees hired after 1996 are fully funding their own pension. What we're paying for are the unfunded portion from years ago. So I don't want people to leave here going, boy, the pension is a good benefit. It is. And I want people leaving here thinking that your taxes are going up to pay for that for your current employees. These are past sins. This is not the people that are here in the room with you tonight. The other point I'd make is we don't balance the budget on an annual basis by deferring capital investment. In other words, just like again in your personal lives, you have to take care of your vehicle, you have to maintain your home. Well, we have to take care of our equipment and replace it. We got to take care of the roads, we have to take care of our buildings, and every so often we have to do a complete renovation on one of these facilities, which we'll be doing hopefully this year on the fire station. But this budget is balanced not just in the current fiscal year, but it's balanced in the long term in terms of sustainability by making sure that we're taking care of those capital investments as well. And as I said before, we're bringing forward a budget that minimizes the tax impact. We're asking for what we need to maintain the level of services. There's nothing wild or new in this budget. As I say every year, Northborough is held up as a model statewide. We do presentations on behalf of the governor for his best practices program. We train, if you serve on a finance board or committee anywhere across this state, On an annual basis, the town of Northborough trains you on best practices in budgeting and capital planning, and we provide training across the state for financial trend monitoring and all the things that we do well here. We've been fortunate to receive a national award for 9 years in a row now, and we're very proud of that. And what you should feel proud of is the fact that the information that gets provided to the people behind me on these boards and committees, they spend 6 months looking at this stuff in gory detail so that you don't have to. But we follow national best practice and make sure that they have the information that they need to make an informed decision, to make an informed recommendation to you tonight at town meeting. So with that, I'd be happy through the moderator to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Hearing no questions, let me remind you of what we're voting on for Article 4. I move the town vote to raise and appropriate and transfer from available funds the sum of $22,790,702 for town government as displayed in the warrant booklet, and to meet said appropriation, the following sums available for appropriation be transferred from: transfer from Cemetery Trust Fund, $12,264. Transfer from cemetery sale of lots, $17,750. Transfer from debt exclusion premium reserve, $12,548. Transfer from DPU Transportation Fund, $1,999. Transfer from Conservation Commission fees, $6,741. Transfer from the Fire Emergency Medical Services Revolving Fund, $325,252. Transfer from Recreation Revolving Fund, $166,662. Transfer from Animal Control Revolving Fund, $32,677. Transfer from Medicare Part D subsidy, $72,624. Transfer from PEG Access Cable Related Fund, $303,566. And from free cash, $500,000, for a total of $1,452,083. And of that, that the sum of $21,338,619 be raised by taxation. I get so excited when we do this, I forget things. Could I have the recommendations on Article 4 from the Board of Selectmen, please?
Board of Selectmen recommends unanimously to approve this article.
Thank you. And may I hear from the Appropriations Committee?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. This article requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Those opposed, please raise your cards. Article 4 passes. Article 5.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to raise and appropriate and transfer from available funds the sum of $5,726,753 for the operation of the water, sewer, and solid waste utilities in the amounts of $2,548,680 for the Water Enterprise Fund, $2,244,114 for the Sewer Enterprise Fund, and $933,959 for the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. And to meet said appropriation, the following sums available for appropriation be transferred: from Water Fund free cash, $162,648, Solid Waste Fund free cash, $28,799, raise and appropriate by taxation, Solid Waste General Fund subsidy, $417,160, for a total of $608,607, and that the sum of $5,118,146 be financed from water, sewer, and solid waste revenues and allocated as stated above.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. May I have a presentation from our DPW Director and our Town Engineer?
You may, Mr. Moderator. The water, sewer, and solid waste budgets are enterprise funds as authorized by statute, which provides a separate accounting and financial reporting mechanism for municipal services for which a fee is charged in exchange for goods and services. This allows the community to demonstrate the public portion of total costs of the service that's recovered through user charges and the portion that's subsidized by tax levy, if there is any. I'll present the proposed budgets for water and sewer enterprise funds, and our town engineer, Fred Litchfield, will then present the proposed budgets for solid waste and enterprise funds. On average, the town of Northborough uses approximately 900,000 gallons of water per day, all of which is purchased from the MWRA. This water system facility map illustrates our interconnection with the MWRA off Bartlett Street, our 2 water storage facilities, and the 4 wells we have which are currently inactive. The water distribution map shows the limits of our water distribution system. Approximately 80% of the town receives water from a public water supply. The $2,548,680 proposed FY20 Water Enterprise Fund operating budget is a $51,962 or 2.1% increase over last year. This increase includes $32,666 in the MWRA annual assessment, which accounts for approximately 63% of this year's total increase. We also have state-mandated engineering services that are required for dam safety compliance, as well as for our new valve maintenance program. Our water consumption continually decreases at approximately 1% per year during normal precipitation patterns, and that's directly a result of continued conservation efforts by all of our customers. Rates this year are expected to modestly increase again in 2020. That's going to be following the completion of our formal rate study. Approximately 30% of Northborough has access to the town's wastewater collection system. The sewer collection system map illustrates the area, which includes our 9 pumping stations. All of Northborough's sanitary sewer is collected, discharged, and subsequently treated by the Marlborough Westerly Wastewater Treatment Plant. The proposed FY20 Sewer Enterprise Fund operating budget is $2,244,114. This represents an increase of $111,399, or 5.2% over last year. The budget reflects an estimated increase from the Marlborough's use charges of $35,125. It also includes a continuation of our rag controlling problem at our pump stations. This has been much more successful recently with the introduction of our rag grinders. These mechanical devices require an annual replacement for their cartridges at a cost of approximately $16,000 per cartridge. We're budgeting 1 replacement every year, so we'll continue the 3-year cycle of replacement. Nearly all of the remaining budget increase is attributed solely to the long-term borrowing for the 2 recent pump station projects we've completed. One was at West Main Street and the other one was at Hudson Street. It should be noted that Northborough's share of the $30 million treatment plant improvements and our share of the operating costs remain completely uncertain due to our ongoing negotiations with the city over our intermunicipal agreement. Anticipating the significant increases over the past, we've instituted a series of incremental rate changes over the past 6 years. We do not expect there to be a rate increase in FY20, pending resolution of our agreement with Marlborough and completion of our rate study. Any questions for the moderator?
Are there any questions for DPW? So, Mr. Litchfield, are you going to now present?
Solid waste.
Thank you. Good evening. The Solid Waste Enterprise Fund involves the administration of 2 separate contracts. Collection contract, which requires the curbside collection and disposal of recyclable materials every other week, and the curbside collection of the solid waste on a weekly basis. All solid waste is then delivered to the Wheelabrator facility in Millbury in accordance with our town's long-term contract for disposal. Recycling markets throughout the United States are going through a very difficult and complicated transition. In order to maintain the current program in a cost-effective fashion, the town recently issued an invitation for bids for a new collection contract. Several bids have been received and are currently being evaluated. The total fiscal year 20 solid waste budget as proposed is $933,959, which represents a 15% increase from last year. which adequately accounts for the current recycling market volatility. In fiscal year 20, the appropriation again contains a $10,000 contingency reserve account to ensure funding for the potential of an unforeseen event in the coming year. In 2015, the disposal contract with Wheeler Braided Facility in Millbury was renegotiated, providing a lower tipping fee, thereby reducing long-term costs. Total fee revenues in the fiscal year 20 are estimated to be stable at $488,000, and the projected general fund subsidy is $417,160, along with a transfer from the solid waste fund free cash of $28,799. This allows us to reach the fiscal year 20 solid waste budget of $933,959. The pay-as-you-throw program initiated in January 2003 continues to be very successful, as shown in the chart behind me. You can see that the trash and recycling volumes have been holding steady for the last several years, and as well as the bag prices.
Any questions on the solid waste presentation? Hearing none, may I hear from the Board of Selectmen on Article 5?
Board of Selectmen unanimously approve this article.
And may I hear from the Appropriations Committee, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. This is what we're voting on for Article 5. I move the town vote to raise and appropriate and transfer from available funds the sum of $5,726,753 for the operation of the water, sewer, and solid waste utilities in the amounts of $2,548,680 for the Water Enterprise Fund, $2,244,114 for the Sewer Enterprise Fund, and $933,959 for the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. And to meet said appropriation, the following sums available for appropriation be transferred from Water Fund free cash, $162,648, Solid Waste Fund free cash, $28,799. Raise and appropriate by taxation, Solid Waste General Fund subsidy, $417,160, for a total of $680,607, and that the sum of $5,118,146 be financed from water, sewer, and solid waste revenues, and allocated as stated above. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands, your cards. And those opposed. Article 5 passes. Article 6, please. That would be Susan Lawrence.
I move the town vote to raise and appropriate by taxation the sum of $24,928,558 for the operation of the Northborough K-8 public schools.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded, and our presentation will be by Christine Johnson, School Superintendent.
Susan have it?
And hi, I'm advancing the slides this evening. And it is thank you. Before I begin, I would just like to say thank you to all of you. I was privileged and proud to receive the recognition earlier this evening from John Kadir, but as I who thank you for all of your support, all of your participation throughout the years, and for being a true partner with the school system throughout our many challenges and many occasions to celebrate our students. So many of you in the audience have been present at either a school event or school committees, or have sent emails along the way to assist in the very challenging job we have of providing a high-quality education for all of our students in this community. This is actually my 21st year being part of this school system, being part of this community, and I'm very proud and privileged to have been a part of its growth, and wish the town of Northborough and our students nothing but all the best as they move forward in their careers in education. So thank you. I do also want to thank all of our teachers who work tirelessly on behalf of you, the parents, and the school community, working side by side with our students each and every day. It is just a miraculous experience to travel through our schools and to see the energy, the enthusiasm, the positive school climate that exists in our 5 schools. And I'll be talking about the high school a little bit later, but there as well, the energy is contagious. Their enthusiasm for learning is just a joy to watch and experience, and it is because of your support throughout the years that these opportunities have been provided. And we have moved through the budget process with a mantra, educationally sound and fiscally responsible. And sometimes that's quite a challenge, but doing both allows our students to return to the town of Northborough upon traveling through life, either graduating or contributing in some way to the growth of Northborough. And having that balance continues that tradition, which allows Northborough to continue its high tradition of excellence in all that it does as a community and supporting our schools. So thank you very much. On behalf of all of the teachers and the administrators and all of the staff in our schools, thank you for that, and thank you for the Northborough School Committee for being a guide and for your wisdom throughout this process. And now the budget. So John gave somewhat of a preview of our budget this year. And it begins with 2 guiding documents, our strategic plan, Vision 2020, and each and every year the school committee early in September votes its budget priorities. Those 2 documents help guide us through a very complex and extensive budget process. And this year, the budget priorities that have been established by the school committee early on in discussions in September and a vote in October really form a framework for the work that we've done on the FY20 budget, or the budget that we're presenting this evening. It starts with, first and foremost, always maintaining and supporting high-quality staff and instructional programs that support class size, student-teacher ratios in accordance with our class size policy, voted and approved in 2016. Earlier on, we mentioned the change in enrollments, and when enrollments shift, that does allow us to seize the opportunity to not only provide some relief to the budgeting process, but moreover, to allow us to seize the opportunities to continue our growth. And so this budget really does reflect a maintenance budget, maintaining the programs that we have, but seizing those opportunities, those funding opportunities, because of the shifting enrollments, to allow for incremental growth in the targeted areas that become part of our budget priorities. This year, we do have a 3.0 FTE reduction, mostly at the middle school, due to retirements and shifting enrollments. Over the last 5 years, I want to make sure I have this exactly right, over the last 5 years, we've noticed an enrollment shift of approximately 268 students going into the next fiscal year. And if your children are at the elementary level, the K-5 level, you may have noticed that that enrollment is now, those shifts are moving through the middle school. So this budget does reflect a recognition of that, but also putting things in the budget to offset that 3.0 that we've been hoping to fund for some time, which expand learning opportunities for all students. And as we go through the budget priorities, I'll highlight those and give some examples of where those can be found in the budget. The next, and certainly always first and foremost, is how can we best meet the needs of all of our learners with instructional classroom models that are research-based and reflect best practices. I'm proud to say that next year will be the 3rd year of 2 programs that I spoke to you about 2 years ago. One is our therapeutic learning program, that is housed at Lincoln Street School, and one is our language-based program that is housed at Z School. Launching those programs 3 years ago was an example of seizing a funding opportunity because of shifting enrollments and changes in staffing that allowed us to launch these two new programs. Because of that, we have continued to meet the needs of all learners in many varied ways and allowed or provided opportunities for students in need of specialized services to remain in our community, close to our homes and heart, and to provide those opportunities for learning in our school district. So that's an outstanding program, two programs that have been very successful. Also, to allow continuation of services, those programs through grant opportunities, we call it venture capital, I guess, in the business world, allows us to bring programs in, get them started, and then slowly transition that funding into the operational budget, and those are known as the STEPS program at the middle school. That really do meet the needs of our learners. This budget also reflects next year will be our second year of launching our instructional rounds, which is all about teaching and learning practices and strategies that are research-based. All of our teachers are engaged in this process, usually very busy on professional development days and meeting together as cohorts, observing one another's classrooms, and participating in developing outstanding teaching practices and strategies for all students. We also, I mentioned earlier that we had a 3.0 FTE reduction. To offset that, we recognize that we need to increase our occupational therapist services for our students, so we're adding a 0.2 FTE equivalent in our operational budget for next year. And we are launching the third reading language-based program called Orton Gillingham, which is to support our reading programs at the K-5 level. We also have two other programs known as LIPS and Wilson Learning. So it'll be a third opportunity to address the needs of our students, and this budget incorporates the professional development and training needed for our staff to be very successful upon that launch. Our English language population, our English learner population is increasing within our communities, and so with that comes along state mandates, and state mandates require a certain amount of hours dedicated to providing supports for these students with limited English, and so this budget reflects the transition of a tutor to a teacher position. It's a wonderful opportunity when we can do that in-house. The tutors and the aides get to know our students well, and when opportunities present themselves, we do not need to look outside. We look simply inside and able to move those positions on to full teacher positions. Expand professional development, I mentioned the reading program and also instructional rounds. Another priority for FY20, but a priority that's very familiar each and every year, is to maintain the district's capital assets with a special emphasis on safety and energy efficiencies. There will be a warrant article to upgrade our safe school readiness infrastructure, and that will be Article 19, I believe. So I will save that. I'll be back at the podium for Article 19. Ensure all students in educational program consistent with Massachusetts curriculum frameworks and prepare all students for success in district and state assessments. As you know, we have something called MCAS. It is our state assessment. It's actually MCAS 2.0. It's a revised MCAS from its original introduction in 1992. And just recently, they have updated the science and technology curriculum frameworks. I'm proud to share with you that over the last 2 years, in part due to the great work of our K-12 curriculum leaders and Assistant Superintendent Greg Martineau, we have been able to bring dissection to the K-5 students. That was a big change, and that's really fun to see them do the science experiments that was most often found at the high school level, but that's the change in the science and technology framework. At all of our K-5s where the change really was felt, we have been able to provide equity of resources for all of our K-5 students, which is very exciting. So they can be at Z, they can be at Lincoln, they can be at Proctor and Peasley, and they'll have the same experience, which is exactly what we want for our neighborhood schools. And so we're proud to say our students are ready and will do well on the MCAS because of the resources, but more importantly, the teaching that takes place. the long-awaited, I think since 1992, the state is launching the history and social studies frameworks. So work has begun on that, again, readying our students for those assessments coming along in FY22. But the work has begun, and that will be reflected in our professional development. As part of the change with MCAS 2.0, I'm sure if you have children in the K-12 system, but mostly certainly at K-8, we do have testing online. And so over the last 5 years, we have really invested, again, looking for those funding opportunities in the budget and grants that may have come along in our technology, and we are 1-to-1 at 2-to-8 and 2-to-1 reliable device ratios for K and 1. A lot of work has gone into readying our students and preparing them to test in a very different testing environment. I think second nature to our students growing up with technology, but professional development to ready our students online for teachers. And so we have successfully tested online for 3 years now, and third grade for 2. With that, and with that technology, we are adding a 1.0 technology assistant to support the implementation of some of the curriculum changes using technology in the classroom for our teachers. We have a lot of technology, but woefully understaffed in that area at the K-8 level. Again, these are offsets against 3.0 FTE reduction, so we're not technically adding new positions, but we're adding positions that are key to the incremental growth in our district. The last one is to determine the feasibility of transitioning to a tuition-free full-day kindergarten program. This has been discussed with a very active group of parents for the last 2 years. There is never more a time to do so this year in preparing for next year, in that we remain one of the 45 remaining districts in the Commonwealth that do not offer tuition-free kindergarten. We have a proven transitional model that we are implementing in Northborough, so that, as I mentioned, seizing those funding opportunities, the transition from tuition to operational budget will not create an escalation in any one budget cycle. This is our first year, and we have successfully migrated funding from the tuition revolving account to the operational budget without significant impact to the operational budget. This plan does work. We have implemented it in another borough, and the plan is to transition to tuition-free in 3 to 5 years. We have been successfully able to do that in 3. We're already 1 year down with this budget. And I might also add that it is also a good time to consider taking charge of our destiny around tuition-free kindergarten. The state, once again, is looking at universal preschool, leaving kindergarten in the middle for the state to decide what to do with. And for us to be transitioning now is very proactive, because it is entirely possible, as we know, those of us who work with the state, that they could say on September 1st, you're going to tuition free. So great opportunity for the community to be proactive and in charge of our own budgeting process around tuition free. So I want to thank all of the parents who were part of the subcommittee for the last 2 or so years. It was a lot of great work, and then again this year. Where are some of our offsets in the budget so that we can bring a fiscally responsible budget to the voters this evening? As I mentioned, we did have some enrollment shifts and retirements. There are no programs cut from the budget. They are being maintained, albeit less sections perhaps offered because we have less students to enroll in those sections. This year, we had reductions in special ed, out-of-district placement, and specialized service, in part because of the proactive programming that we've been doing for some time. Very pleased with that. The state has increased circuit breaker reimbursement, and those are the funds that you are reimbursed for after you've spent them. So the state is not giving us any money on a reimbursement that we haven't already spent dollars for. So the way our circuit breaker funding works is that this year we received funding for what was spent in FY18, and because of good practices in budgeting, we used the money we collected this year to offset next year. We are one of few districts that are able to do that. In many districts, they get in and they spend in the very same fiscal year. Very difficult to be ahead of the budgeting process when that happens. Fantastic work on the Z boiler. For those of you who may recall, we had a successful vote on the warrant article last year to replace a very old boiler at Z School, very antiquated. Of all the schools, it was costing us the most to heat Z School, and that boiler replacement was on time and basically under budget, just like the Lincoln Street School project. And we were able to get that boiler fired up, really fired up before the winter season began, and we're already starting to see some heating savings, which we were hoping. So that's going to be a huge savings on the budget next year. We are in year 5 next year of our 5-year transportation contract, so there's no significant increases there, but we actually have a 0 increase on our special ed transportation for next year, which has been a tremendous help to the budgeting process. And we are next year in year 3 of 3 of our contractual negotiations, and we have a 2% COLA reflected in that budget for next year. And really, that really is what is the most impactful to our budget each and every year, because we are human resource based. So our budget for you to consider this evening for FY20 is $24,928,558, approved by the Northborough School Committee. Last year, our appropriated budget was $24,265,593, a budget variance of $662,965, an overall budget increase of 2.73%. Very proud of the work that was done by our administrative team to bring in a budget that is fiscally responsible, but as I shared with you, very educationally sound with those growth areas, those incremental targeted growth areas. Here's a snapshot. I mentioned that the contractual obligation increase, the COLA, really is the most impactful to our budget, and here's why. 84% of our operational budget is human resource based, and 16% are all those other line items that you see on your document that was handed out this evening that provides an overview of the budget. Here's another look at that, disaggregated by the most impactful areas of the budget, most impactful being more than a 1% increase on the operational budget, and they are contractual obligations. Tuitions, while they've gone down, we still have tuition costs for out-of-district placements, utility cost, transportation, and teaching and learning materials. All of the other items are less than 1% of that $24 million budget. So we thank you for your continued support of our students and our teachers and administrators. Thank you.
Thank you. May I hear from the Board of Selectmen on Article 6, please?
Yes, the Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends approval of this article.
May I hear from the Northborough School Committee on Article 6? Okay. For those that didn't hear, it's a unanimous support. And may I hear from the Appropriations Committee, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Are there any questions on the presentation for Article 6? Hearing no questions, this is what we're voting on for Article 6. I move the town vote to raise and appropriate by taxation the sum of $24,928,558 for the operation of the Northborough K-8 public schools. This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Those opposed? Article 6 passes. Article 7 is Northborough, Southborough Regional School District budget, Lynn Winter.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to raise and appropriate by taxation Northborough's share of the assessment for the operation and debt service of the Northborough Southborough Regional School District, the sum of $12,873,956.
Motion has been made and seconded. Presentation will be by our Superintendent, Christine Johnson.
I'm back. I'm pleased to present the Northborough Southborough Algonquin Regional Budget this evening. As John foreshadowed, we did see a shift in enrollment, and we will go through in the presentation a little bit of an explanation how the regional budget is calculated, and it's very much some years a challenge because of the enrollment shift and because it is a regional budget, but it does offer some funding opportunities as well that also help to offset any increases in the budget. Just as our K-8 school committee establishes budget priorities, so does the Northborough Southborough Algonquin Regional School Committee, and I will share those with you. All of those budget priorities are in support of our statement of vision and mission for the Algonquin Regional High School. And our budget priorities for the high school are as follows. It too is a maintenance budget. We may have seen some reduction in section offerings, but no programs have been have been cut from our program of studies offering that have student enrollment in those courses. It's very difficult with the Algonquin budget because the budget cycle is not in sync with the program of studies selection or the course selection, and a budget is not always static. That is, when we vote a budget the next day, we may have some staff reductions, and we may have some students placed out of district, and so throughout the year, not just at budget time, we try to balance those challenges with what the operational budget is, because that does not change. So in FY 2020, again, it does reflect a maintenance budget with sustained incremental growth in targeted areas. The first budget priority, there are 6, is to maintain high-quality staff, instructional programming, and instructional resources. This budget reflects some reductions in our instructional resources in almost all content areas. However, in working very closely with the high school principal, Dr. Walsh, and her leadership team, I can assure you that our students and our teachers will have the resources they need to continue to offer the outstanding educational experience they have as Algonquin students. Strive to achieve class sizes according to school committee policy. As we know at the high school, it's not simply dividing the number of students in a grade by the number of teachers as it is at the elementary level. It's incredibly complex given the richness of our program of studies offering and the number of course sections to support almost 1450 in terms of student enrollment. Prepare all students for high levels of success in college and career readiness. We, again, are proud of the accomplishments of our students with the support of our teachers and the success that they realize beyond Algonquin Regional High School. Just as we had a multi-year plan to increase technology at the K-8 level, we also implemented very successfully a technology plan at the high school. And this year, we are launching this year we piloted a one-to-one blended learning environment for our students, which allow them the option of using their own device or experiencing the use of a reliable Chromebook at the high school. So this budget does reflect an increase in purchasing additional Chromebooks for our students. This is the first year that our high school tested online, and so we needed to make sure as well that we have enough technology to meet those needs of our students as they participate in the MCAS online version. and to create a fund a short and long-term capital plan for the high school. We have been working very closely with the booster organization. The director is our very own Tom Spataro, and they are partnering with us to examine launching a feasibility study to upgrade our fields. I know that's been a big conversation as part of the master plan. We can't do this alone, and so much like we collaborate at the town level, we also collaborate within our school setting to see some incremental growth in all areas, including our infrastructure and our athletic fields. So we're looking forward to the great work and the partnership that that's going to yield in the months to follow. 3 key events have taken place since we created this budget, all of which could significantly or in some way benefit the high school. The first is the governor is talking about increasing Chapter 70. It's important to note that all of what we're presenting for the school this evening is based on the governor's numbers that were released in January. That budget, the governor's budget, probably will not be voted until July. Our students will be out on vacation with their parents or traveling about the community in July. And so it is not uncommon for us to have to revote the assessments in August or in September at the first school committee meeting. Historically, or at least the last 4 years, we've seen a slight increase, and that is a projection and a prediction for this year as well. I mentioned circuit breaker reimbursement. It not only benefits the K-8 to offset special ed out-of-district tuitions that have been realized in the previous years and budgeted for the next year, but we anticipate that there will continue to be an active dialogue about increasing that number. Ideally, it was supposed to be funded on the onset at 100%. This is about as high as I've seen the percent reimbursement in probably the 8 years at central office. And there is a notion and a movement that this will increase to perhaps 74%. That will provide some additional resources for the high school as well. We had reductions in the Assabet Valley Collaborative placements. That is not the Assabet Valley Regional High School. That is the Assabet Valley Collaborative, which is where we place a lot of our students who may need additional supports beyond the walls of the high school, and we've actually seen reductions in costs in those placements. Regional transportation is essential to a regional school district. We have, and all regional schools are eligible for transportation reimbursement, which again is at its highest rate of reimbursement in many years. It's 71% next year. There is a bill going through to increase that number as well. I will share with you that there have been a lot of conversations about regional transportation in relationships to start time. What folks may not really appreciate is that because we are a regional high school, our buses never return to the lot. They just tear off, and that allows some cost savings for our K-8s. Because we use the same buses in the same bus contract. So that is incredible savings. Why do I share this with you? In the original budget proposal, we have some reductions in staffing. And the reductions are about a 3.20 total reductions based on enrollments and class size and election or electives that may be undersubscribed over a period of 5 years. So these reductions were based on a 5-year analysis of enrollments. Because of these increases, we are able to put some of those reductions back without impacting or realizing an increase in the budget that you'll be voting on tonight. So we're very excited about these recent state budget discussions. John mentioned earlier that there has been incredible savings in healthcare. The regional district partners with the town of Northborough on healthcare. A couple years, last year I think it was, John, we went to a single source provider. And for the regional budget, who funds the cost of insurance within its operational budget, much like a town would in its budget. We realized a 0% increase because of its membership and a slight increase of about 2% in retiree benefits. So this is the lowest we've ever seen that, which means in a typical budget, a 3% increase, at least 1.5% funds those operational expenses that would otherwise be captured in a town budget. So we're happy that this 3% is not about insurance or about those other increases that a town might experience, like liability insurance and Medicare and so forth. That's one of the challenges in a regional school district and also in its budget. Our athletic program and our facilities expenditures are offset with fees and receipts. The athletic budget is funded about 60% in the operational budget. The rest is funded through the great work of our support organization, parents, and gate receipts and fees. Facilities rental income, that high school is a happening place on the weekends. It's a great place to hold a venue, and we try to make sure that we are capturing some rental savings from that as well. And our parking lot upgrades, our snow plowing is captured in the budget, but also offset by parking fees and student activities. Our contractual increases, again, year 3 of the collective bargaining. Next year we will begin bargaining anew, and those are some of our cost factors this year. Last year, our budget was $23,082,958. This proposed budget is $23,775,448, a budget variance of $692,490, or a budget increase of 3%. This is an interesting snapshot because everything you see in blue, basically, we have little control over the costs. The first is contractual obligations. Transportation, which is by contract, school choice, which is a mandate by the state of Massachusetts. Fortunately, we have very few students choicing out of Algonquin Regional High School. I mentioned retirement, which is the insurance. Medicare, again, the costs are contained in the operational budget. District costs for operating central office. And the things that you see in yellow, the categories that you see in yellow, are athletics, activity, teaching materials, and technology, and maintenance of operations. This is how the regional budget and Northborough's share is calculated. We start with the approved budget, Regional School Committee approved budget of $23,775,448. Because we are a regional school, we have offsets, and they include Chapter 70 aid, directly from the state, $3,153,214. Regional transportation reimbursement of $717,792. And because, much like the town of Northborough, we have our balance sheet invested, and we have miscellaneous income on a yearly basis of $20,000. Those offsets are subtracted because they pass through the state or from some other means than the Northborough town budget of $3,891,006. After the offsets, we have a balance due of 19 on the approved budget of $19,884,442. The state mandates a minimum contribution by every district and city in town. And so Northborough's minimum local contribution, otherwise known as MLC, is set by the state and oftentimes not available to us as we are building the budgets in January. It is released sometime at the end of January. We've tried to get them to do this sooner for regional districts. It hasn't happened yet. Northborough's contribution is $8,470,957. Subtracting out Southborough's, there is still a remaining contribution after all those offsets, mandated and collected, of $6,131,922. That amount is calculated based on the regional agreement when the high school became Algonquin way back in 1962. And that's based on the October 1 enrollments. As John mentioned, the enrollments have shifted, and Northborough's portion is 61.67%, or 894 students. When we multiply that $6 million number by the percentage of students, Northborough's additional share, along with its minimum local contribution, is $3,781,556. Therefore, the Northborough assessment, non-exempt, is $12,252,513. Here's some historical perspective on those enrollment shifts. What you see is the fiscal year, the budget increases that were approved, the enrollments and the Northborough percent based on those enrollments, and then the assessment as it relates to all of that information. By the way, this information and this book is available on our website. It has all the data, or a lot of data, that you might be interested in reviewing, not only for the high school, but for the K-8 system. And that is our budget. On behalf of the school committee, thank you for your continued support.
Thank you. May I hear from the Board of Selectmen on Article 7, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Board of Selectmen unanimously recommend approval of this article.
And may I hear from the Appropriations Committee, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Any questions, any debate on Article 7? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to raise and appropriate by taxation Northborough's share of the assessment for the operation and debt service of the Northborough-Southborough Regional School District, the sum of $12,873,956. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 7 passes. Thank you. Article 8. Assabet Valley Regional Vocational School District budget. Oh, here she comes.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to raise and appropriate by taxation Northborough's share of the assessment for the operation and debt service of the Assabet Valley Regional Vocational School District, the sum of $836,310.
Second. Did I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Presentation will be by Chris Luoto, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations at Assabet.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And thank you, Christine and John, for foreshadowing and basically telling you all how regional assessments work and the budget drivers for Assabet. So I should be only 1 minute this evening for you all. But before I begin, I just want to publicly recognize our chairperson of the Assabet School Committee, who is Mrs. Virginia Sims George. She does an outstanding job, and she really represents all of the Northborough residents and runs a great ship over at Assabet Valley. So thank you for all your dedication and work. So I also like to thank the town administration and the members of the Northborough community. We have a strong partnership with Northborough, and it's evident in the long work extension program that our students have done within the community. Most recently, we just completed work and renovation at Memorial Field. Last year, we did a renovation of a home in partnership with Habitat for Humanity, and I believe that we're looking to do things in the future with the DPW. So we really thank you, and I thank you, John, for your support and your willingness to allow our students hands-on learning that just not only benefits them, but one of our member communities in the town of Northborough. So thank you very much for that. Really, the budget drivers this evening, the superintendent unfortunately was ill this evening, and I was volunteered to come and say a few words in regards to the budget. But for those of you that picked up one of these budget books, I will just promote a little bit. This was done and designed by our design and visual students. They've done a fantastic job, so if anybody's looking for work or any similar work, we're more than happy to help you out. But I'm just going to touch base on a couple pages here to just talk to you about the budget drivers for the FY20 budget. So the primary driver, as John had mentioned in his earlier presentation, is the enrollment. Enrollment has gone from 41 students last year to 45 students this year. It's about an increase of 10%. It can be found on page 4 of your budget book. And just to give you some historical context, the last 5 years, the average student enrollment for Northborough is 48 students, with a high in fiscal year 2016 of 58 students and a low of 41 in this current fiscal year, which was last year's October 1st numbers. So as you can imagine, the assessment for Northborough fluctuates based on the enrollment each year. So again, if you look at the operating share for Northborough, it's $694,822, and the proposed capital share for the building project that was approved back in 2013, the capital share is $141,488 for a total assessment of $836,310. That can be found on page 14 of your budget books. And again, another historical context, the $694,000, the operating share, is about $170,000 less than it was in fiscal year 2016 when the enrollment was 58 students, and it's about $50,000 less than it was in fiscal year 2016 when enrollment was 49 students. Assabet's budget this year is going up 4.25%. The primary driver, we're adding a 1.0 FTE. It's a mandate from the Marlborough Police Department and the Attorney General's Office for a school resource officer. Other salary and wages commitments based on our collective bargaining agreement, as well as an overall increase in health insurance. This budget is slightly above net school spending, so we're about only 1% above net school spending, so it's a very lean budget this year. And so because of the increased enrollment, as you just learned about minimum local contribution, Northborough's numbers, because enrollment has gone up, Northborough's numbers have gone from $592,000 minimum local contribution last year to $673,000 for the FY20 budget, which is an increase of almost 14% overall. So that's the state number that's mandated based on Northborough's ability to pay and the increase in enrollment. These are really the factors that are driving the increase in the budget. Again, we pride ourselves on being fiscally responsible. I think it's evident with, we're presenting a budget this evening that's just 1% above net school spending and basically meeting what the state is requiring to spend on education. And I would certainly be happy to answer any questions through the moderator.
Thank you. May I first get the input from our Appropriations Committee on Article 8, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Any concerns? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on for Article 8. I move the town vote to raise and appropriate by taxation Northborough's share of the assessment for the operation and debt service of the Assabet Valley Regional Vocational School District, the sum of $836,310. This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 8 passes. Thank you. Article 9.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to authorize revolving fund annual expenditure limits for fiscal year 2020 as shown in the table in the warrant booklet.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Presentation by Mr. Kader.
This is essentially a housekeeping article under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and 1/2. Yes, they're that precise, E and 1/2. The revolving fund limits must be reauthorized every year. Essentially, revolving funds are used where fees are charged for program services, and those fees are held in a special account and used to offset the cost of providing those services.
Thank you. May I hear from the Appropriations Committee on Article 9, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Are there any questions or concerns on Article 9? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to authorize revolving fund annual expenditure limits for fiscal year 2020 as shown in the table on the warrant booklet. And it's the Fire Department, Animal Control, Family and Youth Services, Council on Aging, Community Affairs, and the Library. This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 9 passes. Article 10.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $175,000 for a reserve fund to provide for extraordinary or unforeseen expenditures in accordance with the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 6, and to meet said appropriation, $175,000 be transferred from free cash.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Mr. Kadir.
Again, this is an annual authorization, $175,000 in the control of the Appropriations Committee behind me, and basically it deals with unforeseen situations or circumstances. Most often it's storm-related, and essentially the revenues are coming from our available funds, our free cash. They're under the control of Appropriations. If they don't use them and we have no emergency, that's where they stay.
Thank you. And may I hear from the Appropriations Committee, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. Are there any questions on Article 10? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $175,000 for a reserve fund to provide for extraordinary or unforeseen expenditures in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 6, and to meet said appropriations, $175,000 be transferred from free cash. This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. We're getting good at this. Article 10 passes. Article 11, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $200,000 for transfer to the stabilization fund, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $200,000 be transferred from free cash.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Presentations by Jason Little, our Finance Director.
Okay. This article provides for a $200,000 transfer from free cash to the stabilization fund. The transfer is designed to bolster the town's reserves. The reserves levels reflect the community's ability to react to unforeseen circumstances and to minimize or avoid borrowing for capital expenditures. The stabilization fund is the town's main reserve fund, so it's a reflection of the town's creditworthiness and flexibility. Therefore, this addition to the stabilization fund should help maintain our favorable AA1 bond rating. Within the town's financial policies, the town has a stated goal to maintain reserve levels that average between 5% to 10% of the budget. With the FY 2020 budget, this level is maintained at 8.1%.
Thank you. May I hear from the Appropriations Committee, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. Are there any questions on Article 11? Not hearing any questions, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $200,000 for transfer to the stabilization fund, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $200,000 be transferred from free cash. Once again, a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 11 passes. Article 12, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $315,000 for the use of the fire department for the purchase of one new ambulance, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $315,000 be raised by borrowing in accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7, 11, or any other enabling authority, and the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to issue bonds or notes therefore.
Motion has been made and seconded. And Mr. Kadir, could you give us a presentation?
Okay, so I have an overview presentation that is designed to actually streamline the next 9 articles, certainly at least the next 8 articles. But we have a capital budgeting planning process in town, and essentially there's 2 components. There's a capital improvement plan, which is a 6-year plan that spells out everything that we're going to buy in terms of equipment, facilities, building renovations, things of that nature. The first year of that plan is the capital budget, and that's what's before you this evening. It consists of Articles 12 through 20. The plan in total is about $4.9 million. Articles 12 through 16 are the general fund. Article 20 is the fire station project, and then Articles 17 and 18 are the water and sewer enterprise. In total, we're looking at about $4.9 million this evening. Now, the best part about this proposal, or this budget rather, is that the majority of these articles will be able to be approved this evening by you with no additional tax impact or rate impact to you. The town of Northborough has a very excellent planning process whereby we take one-time revenues and we limit them in the operating budget. We use the one-time revenues to pay for one-time capital expenses. And so basically it allows us to do a lot of pay-as-you-go capital. And the beauty of that is we're not bonding or taking on debt for those projects. So as you look at the pie chart behind me, basically the red $2.1 million is the only debt that we're going to be issuing for out of that $4.9 million. And that is for the first phase of the fire station building project. $861,000 in free cash. We also had, you heard the superintendent mention the Lincoln Street building project. The Lincoln Street building project finished $1.38 million under budget. We actually designed, bid that project out, and we essentially had no change orders whatsoever. The Mass School Building Authority, which financed roughly half of that project, couldn't believe how well it went off. And so essentially, we have remaining bonds, revenues from bonds, $1.38 million, that we are proposing tonight to roll forward towards the next phase of the fire station building project. The key that I want everybody to keep in mind with the projects that are going to come forward, particularly projects or Articles 12 through 19, again, there's no additional tax impact, but this process that we use continues to make sure that we invest in our equipment, in our infrastructure, in our roads, in our facilities in a financially responsible way. So I hope it gets a good reception. And again, the whole point of this is to plan in a way that minimizes the tax impact. So we're constantly replacing our equipment, but we're doing it on a regular basis using available funds. We're not issuing debt for things like police cruisers or DPW trucks or anything like that. So it's a very financially responsible way to proceed. The beauty of this is since fiscal 12, which is when we put this policy in place, we've had over about $16.5 million in pay-as-you-go capital that has not added to the tax impact for residents. Over $11 million of that has been free cash. Years ago, before this policy, any one-time revenues that we have, we would roll them forward in the operating budget. So it would have a multiplier effect, grow the operating budget, and it would make us susceptible to a structural deficit. Because if those one-time revenues don't come in a subsequent year, then you've got a structural gap that you have to fill. So it's following best practices. This is what the Department of Revenue recommends. And frankly, of all the policies that we have in Northborough, our free cash policy is the one that we get requested to come out and speak on and to explain how it works more than anything else that we do. Because you get off that train of constantly just charging the credit card. And so what happens over time is your debt levels drop off. And we're going to talk a little bit about debt levels when we get to the fire station building project. Because the debt levels drop off and it creates capacity to do a significant project like a fire station or the library or the senior center projects. So I'm going to steal a little bit of the thunder from the people behind me, but every one of these projects that we're going to run through for you right now has the unanimous support of the Appropriations Committee and the Financial Planning Committee. So with that, I would turn it over through the moderator to the fire chief to speak to the first article, which is the replacement of the ambulance. Great. So I was just informed that the mic was off the whole time.
You heard him, right?
So.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As Mr. Credier stated, this ambulance replacement is part of our regular ongoing capital improvement plan. This will be replacing our first due 2016 ambulance, which will be moving back to a second due. And our second due, which is currently a 2012, will be becoming a mechanical spare. It will be designed as an advanced life support ambulance, as we do provide a paramedic service. And I'm available to take any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions for this one? Hearing no questions, this is what we're voting on for Article 12. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $315,000 for the use of the fire department for purchase of one new ambulance, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $315,000 be raised by borrowing, in accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 711, or any other enabling authority, and the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to issue bonds or notes therefore. And this is a 2/3 vote. So tellers, be on your toes. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Those opposed? I declare that Article 12 has passed by a 2/3 vote. Article 13, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $145,000 for the use of the police department for the purchase of 3 new police vehicles, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $145,000 be transferred from free cash.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Presentation by our police chief, Bill Liver.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's basically very simple, speaks for itself. We're looking to replace 3 cruisers. We replace on 2 cruisers 1 year, 3 cruisers the next. Keeps our cars relatively in good shape and capable of responding. The cars come with a 100,000-mile warranty, so our maintenance is relatively low. And we found that in the 4-year replacement, the 4-year or 100,000-mile replacement cycle works best for us. So thank you very much. I'll take any questions.
Thank you.
Bill, advance the slide.
May I hear from the Appropriations Committee on Article 13, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. May I hear from the Financial Planning Committee on Article 13?
Mr. Moderator, the Financial Planning Committee unanimously supports approval of this article.
Thank you. Are there any questions on Article 13? Hearing no questions, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $145,000 for the use of the police department for the purchase of 3 new police vehicles, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $145,000 be transferred from free cash. This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed? Article 13 passes. Article 14.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $90,000 for the use of the DPW department for the purchase of a 1-ton pickup truck with a plow, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $90,000 be transferred from free cash.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded, and a presentation will be by our DPW director.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This request is to fund the replacement of a 2000 F-350 pickup truck with a similar utility body truck with plow. The vehicle is used for a daily performance of a variety of tasks, including servicing the cemetery operations. It's also used for 24-hour response to emergencies throughout town. The useful life of these vehicles is typically 10 to 12 years. The vehicle will also assist with snow removal in the winter.
Thank you. May I hear from the Appropriations Committee on Article 14, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. And may I hear from Financial Planning, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Financial Planning Committee unanimously supports approval of this article.
Thank you. Are there any questions on Article 14? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $90,000 for the use of the DPW department for the purchase of a 1-ton pickup truck with a plow, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $90,000 be transferred from free cash. This is a majority vote as well. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed? Article 14 passes. Article 15, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $271,000 for the use of the DPW department for the purchase of a 20-ton dump truck with spreader and plow, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $271,000 be transferred from free cash.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. You may.
This request funds the replacement of a 20-ton 1999 model Mack truck with a salter, spreader, and plow. The useful life of these vehicles is 15 to 20 years. The town has 10 of these style trucks in service and have them on a replacement schedule of every other year. This truck will be used for snow removal operations and to haul construction materials during the construction season. Any questions?
Thank you. And may I hear from Appropriations on Article 15, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
And may I hear from Financial Planning, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Financial Planning Committee unanimously supports approval of this article.
Thank you. Are there any questions on Article 15? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $271,000 for the use of the DPW department for the purchase of a 20-ton dump truck with spreader and plow, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $271,000 be transferred from free cash. This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 15 has passed. Article 16, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $300,000 for road improvements and maintenance, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $300,000 be transferred from free cash.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded.
Thank you. This article requests funding for another year of our roadway maintenance program implementation. Our current roadway funding is $800,000, which includes $500,000 from the state Chapter 90 funding and $300 from our operating budget. Approval of this article will provide the final $300,000 needed to level fund the effort required to maintain our current roadway conditions. In 2019, our pavement management study showed that the past support in this amount has allowed the department to maintain the town's roadway conditions. They're currently shown as 73.4. This slide depicts 3 annual budget scenarios. The lower line presents a $500,000 a year budget. The middle line presents the proposed $1.1 million budget, and the upper line presents the $2 million budget. In order for us to remain on a positive trajectory, we're required to have a $1.1 million level funded as we have in the past years.
Thank you. May I hear from the Financial Planning Committee on Article 16, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Financial Planning Committee unanimously supports approval of this article.
And the Appropriations Committee, please.
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Are there any questions on Article 16? Hearing no questions, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $300,000 for road improvements and maintenance, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $300,000 be transferred from free cash. This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 16 has passed. Article 17, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $75,000 for the use of the DPW department to fund the planning and design of renovations and expansions to the water and sewer garage, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $45,000 be transferred from water enterprise free cash, and the sum of $30,000 be transferred from sewer enterprise free cash, for a total of $75,000.
Motion has been made and seconded. Please.
Thank you. This request is to fund the planning and design services associated with a second operational building at our water and sewer garage facility. The current building was constructed in 1964, which is prior to the existence of our sewer division. Since that time, our equipment fleet has evolved significantly. It now includes a higher level of technology, which warrants that these apparatus be stored indoors as opposed to outside, as shown in the slide. These funds will be used to develop design documents and cost estimates for future construction funding considerations.
Thank you. May I hear from Appropriations Committee, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
And may I hear from the Financial Planning Committee?
Mr. Moderator, the Financial Planning Committee unanimously supports approval of this article.
Are there any questions on Article 17? Okay, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $75,000 for the use of the DPW department to fund the planning and design of renovations and expansions to the water and sewer garage, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $45,000 be transferred from water enterprise free cash, and the sum of $30,000 be transferred from sewer enterprise free cash, for a $75,000 total. This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 17 has passed. Article 18, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $70,000 for design services for the rehabilitation of the Assabet Hill water tank, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $70,000 be transferred from water enterprise free cash.
Motion has been made and seconded. The presentation.
This project includes the cleaning and recoating of the exterior of our 3.5 million gallon Assabet Hill water storage tank. Water quality improvements will also be provided and enhanced through an interior non-mechanical mixing system. The funding for this year is for design and permitting only, and will be before you to seek construction funding in a future time.
Thank you. May I hear from appropriations on Article 18?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. And financial planning, please.
Mr. Moderator, the Financial Planning Committee unanimously supports approval of this article.
Thank you. And do we have any questions on Article 18? Hearing no questions, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $70,000 for design services for the rehabilitation of the Assabet Hill water tank, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $70,000 be transferred from water enterprise free cash. This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 18 has passed. Article 19, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $185,000 for the purpose of installing enhanced security systems in Northborough K-8 schools. Such security enhancements to include new telecommunication systems, including public address system, security card access, and interior and exterior camera installations, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $55,167 be transferred from free cash, and the sum of $129,833 be transferred from the remaining balance of the appropriation voted under Article 23 of the warrant for the April 23, 2018 town meeting, Z school boiler replacement.
Motion has been made and seconded. Superintendent Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As the warrant article indicates, this is a vote to enhance the infrastructure with respect to safety and security upgrades within all of our K-5 systems, K-5 schools. I'd like to also thank Chief Liver and Chief Parente for partnering with us throughout not only the writing of this article in terms of infrastructure upgrades, but throughout the process of ensuring that our schools continue with their safe school readiness enhancements.
Thank you. May I hear from the Appropriations Committee on Article 19, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. May I hear from the Financial Planning Committee, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Financial Planning Committee unanimously supports approval of this article.
Thank you. Are there any questions on Article 19? Yes. Your name, please?
I'm Carter Brannon.
You need to address.
I was just wondering about the internal cameras. I'm a student at Algonquin, and we've noticed that the new cameras of a couple years ago. It's just, what exactly are they for? Like, who's watching them? What are they watching for? When are people watching these cameras?
So with respect to the warrant article, I'm not sure we're talking about equipment. I think we're really talking about usage, and I think that is a great question. Carter, that we probably want to engage in at the school level.
Okay.
In this case, because it's a security article, that does limit the amount of conversation I can have about where, how, when, and
Okay.
so forth. And I'm sure you can appreciate the sensitivity of that, but would welcome an opportunity to take that question offline. Because again, it does speak not to the infrastructure itself and the equipment, but how those systems are being utilized.
Okay.
I can assure you that anyone that is watching over you is really just to maintain the safety of our campus, but moreover, the safety of all of our students who participate in day-to-day life at Algonquin.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on Article 19? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $185,000 for the purpose of installing enhanced security systems in Northborough's K-8 schools. Such security enhancements to include new telecommunication systems, including public address system, security, card access, and interior and exterior camera installations. And to meet said appropriations, the sum of $55,167 be transferred from free cash, and the sum of $129,833 be transferred from the remaining balance of the appropriation voted under Article 23 of the warrant for the April 23, 2018 town meeting, Z School boiler replacement. And this is a majority vote as well. All those in favor, please raise their cards. And those opposed? Article 19 passes. Article 20, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $3,500,000 to acquire land located at and known as 10 Monroe Street and 61 through 65 West Main Street, shown as parcels 7, 9, and 10 on Northborough Assessors Map 63, and containing approximately 3.97 acres, and pay for related site costs, owner's project managed services, and architectural studies for a new fire station. And to meet said appropriation, the following unexpended amounts of money totaling $1,383,451 that were initially borrowed to finance capital projects that are now complete and for which no longer liability remains, be transferred, and the amount of $2,116,548 be raised by borrowing in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7, 1, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, provided, however, that the appropriation under this article shall be contingent upon a successful debt exclusion vote under the provisions of Proposition 2.5, so-called, at the May 2019 town election. And further, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to execute all documents and take all action necessary to accomplish said acquisition. Date of approval, April 23, 2012, warrant article number 31, original purpose, Lincoln Street School feasibility, unexpended amount of $16,304. Date of approval, April 28, 2014, warrant article number 19, Lincoln Street School, $1 million, unexpended amount, $1,367,147. Total repurposed funds, $1,383,451.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Mr. Kader, please.
So Dawn Rand, who's the chair of the Board of Selectmen, is also the chair of the Fire Station Feasibility Committee, which is why she had the pleasure of reading the longest motion of the evening tonight. So well done on that, Dawn. As I mentioned in my earlier presentation, we have a 6-year capital improvement plan. The fire station building project has been in that plan for 6 years. It moves up every year. Last year, we proceeded with a feasibility study. So a feasibility study is designed to assess the needs of the department and then to come up with the next step for how we meet those needs. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce Stu Roberts of Johnson Roberts Architects. Stu was the selected architect to do the feasibility study for us. He's going to walk you through that process, and then at the end, we'll come back and answer any questions that anybody has. But I'll cut right to the bottom line in terms of the point of this article. We've completed the feasibility study. In order to move forward to do anything further on this possible building project, we need additional funding to continue the design and to obtain some land. The existing site is too small to expand upon, so either we need to acquire adjacent land or find another site elsewhere. And so Stu's going to walk you through that process, and as I said, we'll come back and answer any questions that you may have. So with that, Stu Roberts.
Great, thank you. We've been working with the Library Feasibility Committee, the town administrator, and the fire department for well over a year now to look at options. It's a multi-step process, and I'm going to try to, as quickly as I can, walk you through the highlights of what that process has been. So we did a number of things in determining the needs for the fire station. We did visits to comparable fire stations to see what other fire stations are doing. We met with the fire department to review their current space needs and future space needs so we could identify all the square footages that need to be included in a new facility. We took a look at the existing conditions of the existing station. We looked at as many possible sites as we could within the town to analyze their potential for accommodating a fire station. We did conceptual site plans, we did conceptual project budgets, and we worked through a site selection process. And where we are now is we have a conceptual design and a budget that goes along with that conceptual design. As John said, there's a whole nother design phase that would be coming, so this is really kind of the first step, but this sets the kind of, I think, basic parameters for the next phase of the project. I put up, this is the program diagram. This is what we do when we do a space analysis, and I won't spend a lot of time on this. I'll talk about some of the spaces a little more when we get into the plans. But one of the points I wanted to make with this is you see three colors up here. This is a diagram. I don't know whether you can make it out, but it's basically all the spaces that would be contained within the fire station drawn to scale with the furnishings and the equipment and everything that needs to be in it. That's a test for the square footage. The colors, you see a red, a gray, and a green. And that's because we want to design a healthy fire station. Firefighters currently suffer incidents of cancer that are many times what the national average is. And that's because firefighters go out on calls, they get exposed to fumes and smoke and toxins in the course of their duties. They come back to the station, and for years there was no separation really between quarters and the sort of dirtier parts of the station. So today's design standards for fire stations, we are really trying to promote firefighter health by providing facilities that allow for personnel and equipment to be cleaned when they return from a call, and to do mechanical systems that will limit the spread of toxins and carcinogens from the apparatus bays and the equipment when it comes back into the quarters. So we're planning mechanical systems, for instance, that are pressurized, so air flows, it's highest in the green zone, so it flows from the green zone to the gray zone to the red zone, but can't go back in the other direction. And that's so that we can keep the quarters and the business areas of the fire station as clean as possible. That promotes not only firefighter health, but the general public, because we have the general public, as you know, coming to the station to conduct business. So we want to keep the general public safe when they come to the station as well. So this just kind of outlines all the spaces that we have, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. We took a look at the existing station. The existing station was built in 1975, and it's about 11,100 square feet. It's a steel frame, brick and concrete building. while some of the mechanical systems are reaching the end of their useful life, the building is in generally okay shape. It's been well maintained. So this project is not about a fire station that's falling down or has mechanical or electrical great needs. It's really due to the fact that the nature of the fire department services has changed greatly in the 44 years since the station was built. So 44 years ago, the population in Northborough was under 10,000 residents. And when it was built and designed, it was for a volunteer station. And currently there are 21 full-time staff. And of course, when it was originally designed, there was no provision for female firefighters. These are all new requirements that have come along. It was also, when it was designed, there was no emergency medical services provided by the fire department. So all of those ambulances and all those calls that they do now, which represent about 68% of the total calls, that was not part of the original design. Over the years, too, like the water department, equipment gets bigger, it gets more numerous, and they are having a hard time fitting the existing equipment into the bays. The bays at the current station, one of the drawbacks is they have a low ceiling height and they're narrow. The low ceiling height means that it's not possible to do a mechanical ventilation exhaust system, so it means the buildup of diesel fumes inside the apparatus bay, and the bays themselves are narrow, which make it hard to work around the trucks. So those are all conditions that we'd like to remedy in a new station. So, as I said, this is really about all the changes that have happened to the nature of firefighting in Northborough since the station was built 44 years ago. We took a look at the existing site. You can see behind me it's outlined in blue. The brown area, of course, is the existing station. The existing station is about 10,000 square feet. We're obviously much larger than that. The site itself has a brook to the back, so there's some conservation limits to the site. So there's just no way that we can accommodate the fire station's needs on the existing site without acquiring some additional property. Due to that, the town put out an RFI for potential sites, and I think the town contacted just about everybody who's in the central area of the town. The idea was to keep the station in the central area because it's due to response times. If it was in one corner of the town, it would be harder to get to the other corner. So really the goal is to maintain it in the central part of the town where we can have good response times. So we identified an area within the town that would work, and I think everybody who had who might potentially have land that they might be interested in selling was contacted. We were looking for developable land of about 2.5 acres, and we needed about 400 feet of frontage in order to accommodate all of the trucks, and obviously rights of ways and easements are an issue. We got a number of responses to that RFP and RFI. Fortunately, there were 2 sites that were identified which could feasibly house a fire station, an expanded fire station. The first one is basically, it's the Pierce Street site. It's the site where the current fire station is, with the addition of 10 Church Street and 7 Pierce Street. So that gives us enough room that we could expand the station, or really probably do a new station on that site. The couple of issues with this site were that it actually was a little bit more expensive to do the site development on this site than the other site I'll talk about in a moment. But probably more significantly, this one would involve the need to do a temporary fire station, because we would be taking down the station that's there. We can't just not have fire service in the town for a year during construction. So it would mean creating a temporary fire station, and that's a significant cost. We estimated it could be about $700,000 to $900,000 to do that. And so that meant that the Pierce Street site with 10 Church Street and 7 Pierce was really more expensive than the other site that we looked at. The other site, of course, is 65 West Main Street with 10 Monroe Street. So that's right across from the Dunkin' Donuts. I think you probably all know where that is. This site is also big enough to accommodate the proposed building program, and it would also provide the town with some additional area that could maybe be developed in the future. Less expensive to develop the site, and no need, obviously, for a temporary fire station here because the fire station can remain where they are. The new building's constructed, and it's one move over into the new station. So the Main Street site was identified as the preferred site. We did a conceptual site plan here that shows the fire station on Main Street, right? There's Main Street, which runs here. The site is big enough that we can set it up, swing this around, so that we can get fire trucks around to the back and drive through. That means we don't have to back trucks off of Main Street into the fire station. There is some grading that we need to do in the back of the station because the grade's a little bit higher, but we can take that down and still maintain a slope of about 3 to 1 on the back side so that you won't have some of the retaining walls and things that I think you may have seen in some of the other adjacent properties. This is basically organized. We'll talk more about the plan, but there's an apparatus bay. There's kind of the business part of the station, and then there's the training room. And then we have parking on really two sides of the station. The station is set back from the street, so there's an apron that can accommodate trucks outside the building. When we go inside the building, there's six double deep apparatus bays. And that's really for the current fire and EMS equipment, with a little bit of room for some expansion. We planned it with some folding apparatus bay doors in the front, and that's will be a plus because that gives us they open quicker and will provide a quicker response time in the case of emergencies. The facility is planned so there are a number of decontamination facilities that are located around the outside of the building. So essentially, this is kind of that red zone that I had talked about. So we have the trucks returning from fires, but we have areas for personal decontamination, so a firefighter can go in and get cleaned off when they return back to the station, clean their gear. There's a setup for bunker gear cleaning, storage of bunker gear, hose cleaning. There's a hose tower for drying the hoses. There's some EMS decon, so if somebody's coming back from an ambulance call and has fluids that they need to clean off, they can do that adjacent. So these are all support areas for the fire station. Then if the public were to come in, you come into a public lobby. There's public toilets. There's access to the training room and to the public desk where you could conduct business there, get a fire permit or whatever coming in, and a conference room that's located up in the front. The training room is designed so that it supports not only fire department training functions, but can operate as an emergency operations center. So in the event of a snowstorm or some other weather event or some other natural disaster, this room is set up so that all the agencies that are involved can have a headquarters and communicate easily with one another. So that's will be a big plus for the town. The back part of the station here, this is really the offices that are set up back here. So this is kind of the business part of the station, which you could access from the front door. There is a second floor which contains the quarters, right? Because we have full-time firefighters, so there are a number of bunk rooms on one side, and there are a number of changing rooms on the other side. Instead of providing separate locker room facilities for male and female fighters, this is an approach that gives us flexibility, because the idea is we have individual changing rooms, so all the changing would take place in a room. So if there's one female firefighter, we can have one. If it was 50-50, we could split them 50-50. But it gives us some flexibility there, so we're not building facilities that might be overutilized or underutilized. And those changing rooms are provided right here, and then there's number of individual bunk rooms. We have a physical training room in the back, and day room. There's a kitchen, day room, and eating area that are located in the front. So it's really firefighter quarters that are up on the upper floor. We did one kind of conceptual computer model. This is not really designed yet. It'll go through a whole public process and review process. This is really to get us to the point that we could send this off to an estimator and get an estimate back. And what I would take away from this really is we have a one-story portion that houses the equipment. We have a two-story portion that's the business areas and the quarters on the upper floor. There's a hose tower, and this is the training room. And then we get to the budget. We went to we had a cost estimate done, a detailed estimate by a professional cost estimator that has done fire stations in the past. We, in today's current dollars, the station construction cost would be about $14,364,000. We're not building it today. It would be built, I'll show you the schedule, but it would really be built in 2021. So we need to escalate that for about 22 months. So this is the inflation factor. So we're putting on about 4%, and that adds about another $1 million to the cost of the project. So construction is about, we're running close to about 15.5. There's a line item in here for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So this is the furniture we need to have in the station and a few other miscellaneous pieces of equipment. There's some other project expenses, and then we have a project contingency that we put on the whole thing. So we took 5% on everything, the construction and everything else, to add another contingency on to come up with a total rounded number for project costs of about $18.8 million. Now, just as a check on the construction costs, we did a little exercise where I took data that I was able to get on some other fire stations. So I took the data I took basically was when they were built, how much they cost when they were built, how big they were, and I divided to get a kind of baseline cost per square foot. But we're comparing that to 2021 dollars, so I needed to do a little separate analysis off to the side, and I went through and I took every year and put an appropriate inflation amount in for each year and multiplied those together and compounded them to try to come up with a kind of comparable cost per square foot number. And basically, the Northborough Fire Station construction costs were coming in at about $584 a square foot, which is about where we're seeing fire stations coming in some other communities right now. The average that I got when I totaled all these up for just the fire stations was about 612. So we're under the a little bit under the average. It's probably a little hard to read. We have some combined police and fire facilities on the top of the chart, and the fire only are on the bottom of the chart. I will point out we've got Southborough in here, which came in a little bit under where we are, and Westborough, which also came in a little bit under the level that we're projecting at. But we're still, with this one, this conceptual estimate, we think we're in the ballpark for having a realistic cost estimate. And finally, just to look at the proposed schedule. Proposed schedule, you can see we're right up here at town meeting. There's a ballot vote that would be coming up in May. And if that's successful, the town would move forward to hire an owner's project manager, which is required by Massachusetts law. And then the design process would start in earnest. We'd go through a schematic design process, a design development process, do all the construction documents, and the plan would be to bid this and be able to come back a year from now with a firm bid in hand. So it wouldn't be based on an estimate. We'd be looking for an appropriation that would be based on a contractor's bid on the project. Then following that, we think it's probably going to take, I think it's about 14 months for construction. So probably, if all goes well, it means the fire station would be moving in sometime in the fall of 2021.
One of the things that we look at whenever we do our capital planning is what the affordability for the residents, but also affordability for us as an entity. And as a corporate entity, we have a policy that our debt policy, that debt service, so the payments for principal and interest in the operating budget, is not to exceed 8 to 10% of our operating budget. And same thing as in your personal lives, again, how much debt you take on is something that you want to be manageable, and you want to take it on for the right reasons. We don't take debt on for vehicles and small purchases. We pay cash for those. We only issue debt for large projects with a useful life typically of 20 years. What this graph tells you is three things. One, we have a policy. Two, it shows that we are well under our policy. And if you look at, let's see if I can do it on here. Right here, this is fiscal 20, fiscal 19, fiscal 20. This is where we are right now. So the debt as a debt service as a percentage of our operating budget is at an all-time low at 4%. And there's a reason for that. If you go back, you heard me talk about our free cash policy, how we don't add debt except for large projects. Free cash policy kicked in fiscal 12 back here. And so we stopped adding any debt and we paid it off. It drops down. Then what happened here is we brought in the Lincoln Street project, right? Because we planned for that in our capital plan. So this is the Lincoln Street popping up right here. We continue to pay off that debt, and we have an added debt onto that, and you see it start to slide down. Now this assumes that we do the fire station at that full price as shown you, and then again, we don't have anything in the next couple of years coming online. That debt will continue to taper down. Essentially, we're going to bounce around and hover around 5%, which is the low end in terms of debt that you would take on as a corporate, again, as a corporate entity. So we're within our guidelines. In fact, we are actually at the well below and at the bottom of those guidelines, even if this project were to be approved. So with that, certainly through the moderator, we could answer any questions.
Before we have questions, I just want input from the boards and committees. From the Board of Selectmen, please.
Mr. Moderator, the Board of Selectmen unanimously approved this article and would hope that you would approve it too.
And may I hear from the Appropriations Committee, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
And the Financial Planning Committee, please.
Mr. Moderator, the Financial Planning Committee unanimously supports approval of this article.
Thank you. There was a question over here.
Charles Frankian. This is the only, I'm not opposed to this at all. My only question is kind of thinking a little bit down the road on debt service. Are there any other big ticket items like a new town hall or something like that in the works that would change that debt ratios that you were talking about?
Yeah, there are all kinds of projects in the works, but as you can see, if I go back to the slide that I just came away from, the idea is to space these projects out so that you're not doing a $20 million. We just did a $25.5 million Lincoln Street building project. So we waited to move into this one, and then yes, we'll need to do something with Town Hall, and eventually we'll need to come back and do Peasley School is probably the one after that. If we plan well and we space these things out, what you do is you moderate the tax impact and you level out the fluctuations in the debt service to keep it manageable, keep it within your policy limits, and to keep it from crowding out other things out of the operating budget. It's no different than in your personal lives. If you take on too much debt, then you have to pay that debt off, and it means that you can't afford to do other things. So. As a corporate entity, it's impossible for us to have no debt because you can't pay as you go for a fire station or a high school project or a senior center or a library. This stuff has to be financed with debt. There's an equity issue too. Argument for paying for these things with debt is because as people move in and out of town, while you're here, that debt service being paid, you're paying your share of that project while it's being used. So.
We have a question right over here.
Yeah, I just had a question with going to the new site. What is the plan for the old fire station once we transition over to the new site?
That's a great question. That would be the subject of a completely separate review. One of the beauties of relocating is twofold. One, you don't have to come up with temporary quarters, which is wasted money and disruption. Two, we have that facility. So that facility can be used for another municipal use, or it could be surplused and sold and used to offset the cost of the project. That hasn't been determined yet. We don't need to decide that right now.
Just as thank you. As a quick follow-up, are there any concerns with that being a brownfield with the contaminants we were talking about with rinsing off the trucks, et cetera?
You talking about the current fire station?
Yeah, just when you're turning it over, if there's any contamination issues.
No, we're not anticipating any issues. Obviously, depending on the reuse of the building on the inside, it would need to be, professionally cleaned, naturally.
Thank you.
One thing, we didn't get your name, sir.
Eric Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Over here, please.
Hi, Francis Musial, 25 Leland. My question was, we have parades go through the center of town. Is there a back exit to the fire station that's planned onto Morone Street so that it could go out to 135 in case there's activity in the center of town, such as Apple Fest, which would allow people to be there and not be hit by a fire truck coming out quickly?
Well, we try not to run our residents over when at all possible. No, it's a great question, but no, that's not a concern. We have parades that go right by the existing fire station now, and really what it comes down to is good planning by our police chief and our fire chief to make sure that they have resources there so that if they need to get out, they can do so safely.
Okay.
Over here, please.
Yeah, Robert Brewster. I got a question on the location.
Yes.
I believe that the location on the eastbound side, where there's a bend in the road, how do you are going to get the emergency vehicles out without being impeded?
Sure, great question. As with any fire station that's coming out onto a main street like Route 20, we'd be installing what's known as an Opticom system. So essentially, the fire apparatus or the emergency vehicles will control a set of lights that will stop the traffic before they know they're going to come out. The traffic is stopped, they're able to exit safely. Now, if you've ever been in the center when there is an emergency call, be it the fire department's coming out, they can control all the lights in the downtown right now so that they can exit safely.
Yeah, well, one of the problems you have is the inclination of the lights. Because when you have a red light at Hudson and Main Street, you go up to South Street and it's red. You get a green light and you can't go no place.
That's for you as a resident, and that happens to me too, but as the fire chief in a truck, he flips a switch and he gets all green lights, or he gets all red lights, whatever he wants to get through safely. That's the point of the system, is to make sure that we stop the traffic and in some instances creates a gap so that the vehicles can get out and proceed safely. We always want them to get
How about on the westbound side now where you got Dunkin' Donuts, where people are trying to go in through the drive-through and the traffic's backed up on the Route 20? Now, that could create a problem also if you're coming out and you want to go westbound.
Sure. The system that would go in would control the flow of traffic on Route 20 entirely in that section to allow them to exit safely. That would be part of the design.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Over here, please.
Millie Milton, 50 Fay Lane, Northborough. I was at the meeting about 3 weeks ago, I think, when all this information was presented. And I feel that it is a very comprehensive study and a pretty significant plan. And it's a lot of information, I think, for the voters to absorb in 3 weeks. I had reached out to a couple of people to ask some questions, and I wasn't able to get them completely answered in time. And I think this is a long-time commitment and a large sum of money to maybe present at this. Is there an opportunity to delay this for a special town meeting or a separate referendum?
Well, this is the planning process. So again, this project has been in the queue for 6 years. The boards and committees behind me have been talking and reviewing this project for 6 years. We've spent the last 12 months looking at all the options and running down all of the information, and the Fire Station Feasibility Study Committee has been looking at this again for this whole time. We've had multiple joint meetings with all the financial boards and committees to review our progress along the way. And the whole point of it is it's the same process we used when we did the Lincoln Street building project, which is you start like a funnel and you work your way down until you come into your preferred option and your preferred location. And that's what town meeting is designed to approve at this point. Town meeting isn't the form where you would come in and try to go through what would take months to go through. That's why you have the boards and committees. That's why you have a building committee. That's why you have all the people behind me who spent those months looking at this to make a recommendation to you about what they see as the best avenue. So we had the same comment when the Lincoln Street project came through, and my response then was, this isn't the venue to go through those types of options. That's why we have this process. Does that make
So at what venue would people be able to get all that information and look at it and then make a decision?
Yeah, as we move forward, again, as Stu Roberts indicated, this is a conceptual design. Really, the point of the feasibility study is to say, what do we need as a department for space? And you get blocks of space, and then roughly how do they fit together in a potential design? Would that design fit on the site that you're looking at? And that's really as far as we've gotten. It's, again, a conceptual feasibility study. Moving forward, as we look at the design and the design development, there would be, just like we do for every building project, there'd be multiple public input sessions to hear thoughts on the design. I know some people have thoughts about how they would like the fire department or the fire station to look, but that process would include public hearings as we move forward. Because just so everybody's clear, this needs to be approved by a 2/3 vote here tonight. It also needs to be approved by a majority vote at the ballot, not only this year at the election, but the idea is to have the money and the funds to do the full design, to bid it out, and to come back at town meeting next year with the full design, the actual bid cost for the project, and to seek funding at that point.
But tonight, we would be deciding on the specific location, correct?
Yes, the committee has narrowed it down, and that was, again, a very exhaustive process. We literally sent letters. Does anybody here own property in the downtown? We sent letters to everybody. We sent letters to every realtor, anybody who even thought about maybe having a piece of property or pooling property together. We didn't want to miss somebody who would come to a meeting like this tonight and say, you know what, I've got the perfect parcel in the downtown, and I'm just getting ready to retire, and I would have sold it, but nobody asked me. We asked everybody. And then everybody who responded, we went through a very lengthy process of looking at those parcels. Would they work for us? Could they fit our programmatic needs? And we narrowed it down to basically properties adjacent to the existing station and the other parcel at 6165. And just one other thing I want to make a point here on in terms of location. The town of Northborough is approaching build-out. I mentioned in my budget presentation that we're not seeing a lot more in the way of new growth, right? We have a central station that services our entire town. So if we can find a location and maintain that central, that preferred central location, it means that the station that we're building now will serve our community for the foreseeable future. And so finding available land in the downtown area that's appropriate to site a fire station on, as you go down that criteria, the list gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Quite frankly, we are extremely pleased, I know I was, that we have two viable options. One preferred because, frankly, it's cheaper and it is a better location overall if the project were to be built there.
Was there a study done on the amount of tax revenue that we would be getting from that specific piece of property that could be used as a business?
Well, anytime you use a piece of property for a municipal use, whatever the taxes that you would receive from that, obviously come off the roll. So.
Okay.
Thank you. Over here again.
Evening, John.
Hello.
Kathleen Howland, 20 School Street. With the discussion of the need to wash the equipment with the toxins, is there any infrastructure for environmental responsibility for that wastewater prior to it being dumped into the water sewer system?
Yeah, whatever pretreatment would be required would be put in place, and again, the balance of it, one of the great things about this location is it is on sewer, so a certain amount of that stuff can go into the sewer. But there are pretreatment requirements for any industrial use, and as the fire chief points out, if they are at a fire where their equipment gets contaminated, the equipment doesn't leave, it gets decontaminated at that site.
Okay, thank you.
And over here, please.
Barb O'Mara from Green Street, and I'm just curious how many public meetings that were well advertised and promoted have been given so far, so that people here in town can find out more about what the plans are and what you're thinking about.
So the building committee met about monthly, sometimes twice a month, and then we held a public meeting for all the boards and committees to go through the update where we were when we got to the point where we knew we weren't going to be able to fit on the existing site. And then on April 4th, there was another public hearing. One of the previous commenters mentioned that. That was sent out and put out over cable access, and then there's tonight. So again, the thing I want to stress here is this is a feasibility study. So we have a limited budget and a limited task of what we need to do. The goal of a feasibility study is to determine, can we stay where we are? Do we need more land? How big is the program, and will it fit on a viable site? Oftentimes what you can do, you see a lot of communities will just come in and ask for the full cost of the project, and without a lot of detail. We have a history here in Northborough of doing a two-step process. We did it for the senior center, we did it for Lincoln Street, and that is we do a feasibility study first. Part of it is this process here is to get buy-in that, yes, we do need a new station, and yes, we're going to need to acquire land and money for design if we're going to proceed. And there'll be, again, now we have a whole nother year, so anybody whose interest has been piqued, by all means, we would welcome you at any of the monthly meetings, and certainly we're going to have, as I said, public input sessions specifically to listen and to give information.
Over here, please.
John Ray, 3 Laurel Ave. The numbers that you have up here right now, do they include any tax overrides, or we can do this within the existing budget when I see this 2025 window?
No, that's a great question. In accordance with our comprehensive financial policies, any large building project like this would be done as a debt excluded project, so exempt from the limits of Prop 2.5. That's why, as I said, you need a 2/3 approval tonight, and we also need a majority at the ballot. We'll need a ballot vote this year, and we need a ballot vote next year. Again, same process for the library, same process for the senior center, same process for Lincoln Street. That's how we do all of our major building projects. I don't know too many communities, that could absorb, multiple large building projects within the limits of Prop 2.5. That's why the process is to ask to make your case to the voters and ask for their support, which is what we're doing here tonight.
That's helpful. And as I think of the other projects, Town Hall, and as a Peasley parent, and the $25 million we spent at Lincoln, I look at this graph and it scares me, because I'm looking at the jump for the $21.5 million or that gets us in this bar graph, and I'm thinking the other $25 million on top, and it seems like it's a very aggressive thing to do without making sure we're being super careful about the spend.
Yeah, again, we plan out our tax impacts very carefully, and the beauty of the process that we have, and the fact that we don't charge and issue debt for small projects, means the only projects that we're issuing debt for are these large building projects. And by spacing them out in the interim years, that debt service obviously gets paid off. And you can see, it opens up a window whereby you can take on additional debt. Again, at this point in time, right now, our debt service is at 4%. That's as low as it's ever been. So, again, I'm talking as a corporate entity. Now would be, the time to create that capacity to do that next project.
And where is Peasley in the Town Hall in fiscal year 22, 23, 24, 25 on this graph?
They're not on here, no.
Okay.
No. Keep in mind, Peaslee, so Peaslee School is something that we'll need to work with, I guess, the next superintendent, I worked with the last superintendent on Lincoln. Peaslee School, any school building project is run by the Massachusetts School Building Authority, so they partner. I wish we had a partner on a project like this. There is no grant funding for a fire station. But on all school projects, the state comes in and we got $10.4 million for the Lincoln Street project. And so the problem is in their mind, we just got that project. And so we kind of go to the bottom of the queue and we need to file a statement of interest and we need to make that case. That will just naturally take several years. They're not going to give a large grant to you within a 2 or 3 year space. Obviously, they need to spread that around the entire Commonwealth.
So what I'm hearing from you is you have high confidence there won't be a tax override with the other projects. You can manage all this within the existing way you manage the town today.
Any large project, large building project, will require a debt exclusion. That's our policy. That's the only way it can be done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over here, please.
Doug Stone, 33 Birch Hill. Just had a few questions here. So of the $3.5 million, what part of that is for the land acquisition?
So we went out for for actual bids because we need to find people actually willing to sell us the land. So it's approximately $1.5 million potentially. That would be the ceiling.
And was the contamination cleaned up on that property?
Yes, so what we did is we hired an LSP to go in and there's a 21E review for contamination. We reviewed all those records. As with any purchase and sale, there will be appropriate safeguards for the town to make sure that before the town bought it, that appropriate assessments would be done, and if anything were found, it would be the owner's responsibility.
And last question, is the $3.5 million part of the $18.8 million?
Yes, there's $2.1 million in bonds that is in there, yes.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, Jake Ruskowski, School Street. I just have a question about, I feel like if the $3.5 million is approved, then it's kind of like a poker player going all in. All of a sudden, like next year, you'll be saying, even if this project, which I think at $585 a square foot, seems to me excessive cost for. I don't want to insult firefighters or anything, but we have a vehicle storage building and a dormitory for the firefighters attached to this. It just seems like a really high cost, especially when the architect shows that in 2014 Westborough came in at 420 square feet. What's the justification for the extra $160 a square foot? But my concern is that if the town votes to purchase the land, you're going to come back and say, we already put this much in. We don't have a choice. We're just going to have to dive in no matter what, as long as we can convince the taxpayers to vote for it.
So again, everything that we do is upfront and transparent, and the intent is to build a new station and to build it at that location. In order to do that, we need to acquire land and we need money for design. What we try to do here tonight, look, I don't come in here and try to lowball you on something and say it's only going to cost this, and then when it costs more, go, oh, cheap, oh well. I've been here 16 years. Okay, I did the library project, which by the way Stu was the architect on, senior center project, and Lincoln Street. Every one of those projects came in under budget, and we're being very just upfront that the numbers are staggering in terms of the cost per square foot. But one of the things that we tasked and had a lot of conversations at the committee level and a lot of conversations with the architect to justify those costs. And when you go out and you talk to other towns, like our neighboring town in Southborough, they're building a public safety facility, right? It's $30 million, 15 for police, 15 for fire. Westborough, I talked to Westborough, so I know the manager over there, and we talked to the chief over there. And the simple thing there is sometimes your timing when you go out into the market is good. When we put the senior center out in the market, it was such that we wound up coming in $1 million under the cost estimate. The cost estimates that we're giving you here tonight, we're trying to be just very upfront about what we're seeing in the market. And fire stations are not cheap to build. They're very specialized. You heard Stu talk about the very complicated mechanical systems in there to pressurize for air quality. These are all things that don't exist right now. So one of the things I didn't say about our architect is Stu was hired by the city of Boston to come up with model design specifications for all of their stations aimed at firefighter safety. And so part of it is, that component of it. But again, I'm not trying to get a camel's nose under the tent. We're telling you, this is what we see, this is what it's looking like, and this is where we think we're going to go. The alternative is, keep in mind, there was a question about a delay. The staggering thing is a delay, just look at from between approval, if we go right according to our schedule, we're looking at $1 million in escalation. You delay a year, you're looking at $1 million of escalation that's not going to be value added in the building. So again, we don't want to move things faster than our community is comfortable with, but we're coming to you with an honest cost estimate for an honest project that we've spent the better part of 12 months looking at these needs. And again, these needs didn't arise overnight. This has been in the planning process for over 6 years. So,
Was there any consideration to saying separating the two, EMS in the old building, fire station in the new, which needs the bigger turning radius, bigger drive-in, versus an ambulance, putting them in the old building?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, we talk about that. Does it make sense to have multiple stations or to split things up? The reality is our firefighters are also paramedics. So it's the same people that are going to come to your house if you're having a heart attack or if you burn the bacon. So they need to be in one place. We don't have people who just respond on ambulances and people who just respond on fire calls. Frankly, the chief will tell you the fire calls are down, it's the ambulance calls. But let me tell you something, you do have fires, as we know, and when you have them, you got to have those guys and they got to have the right equipment to take care of that stuff. And we get the most bang for our buck with a model of a central station where everybody's operating out of that centralized station.
Thank you.
Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
those comments or questions.
We have two more people. I'll let them go through.
Hi, Liz Abro.
Hello.
My question is, if we acquire this property now and then the fire station doesn't get approved, what happens then with the property? Is there a plan in place for that property, or is it just going to sit vacant? Or
That's a good question. Frankly, that is, there's, as we said, very limited options of finding a place where you can put a fire station. So if for some reason the fire station as conceived of doesn't pass, my sense is that parcel will still be needed for a fire station. One of the things that we didn't get into too much in the presentation, out of respect for people's time, is that the current location is a very difficult location. Coming out, it worked great, in 1975 when it was a call fire department, we didn't have the traffic and the development in the downtown. But coming out onto Church Street, they have to drive over the island. It's not the best location. Right on Main Street is really where you want your fire station to be.
thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Amberson, Green Street. A little different view for me, but, I think I've had the unique opportunity over, pretty near the last 18 years to see how the capital planning goes, and I think it's important that people understand that any kind of a project like this is not done overnight. In the past, I wrote some notes down here because I knew I'd forget half of it. In the past, we rebuilt this building, Algonquin. We redid the Lincoln Street School, Proctor, the Z School. We redid Aspet Valley. At the same time, in that period, we redid the library. We put an addition on it. We refurbed it. And we also did a senior center. And I guess the point that I'd like for people to understand is that was all done through the capital planning process. This is something, as John said, this has been in the plan for the last 6 years. It's not something that somebody thought up 6 months ago. This is a well-defined process. It's based on sound financial principles. You look at what we accomplished in the last 20 years or so, Northborough is in extremely good financial shape. We have a great bond rating. The metrics that John showed us earlier, everything points to the fact that we are financially sound. I can tell you that the audits that I've been privy to from the state, every year the state comes in and audits our books. We get stellar ratings. Everything points to that we're doing it right. And part of that is this capital planning process. Throughout this process, we're lucky. We're lucky we've got a dedicated bunch of administration, and people that volunteer their time. I believe this group they stood them up over a year ago to review this, to go over all the details. I know the questions have been raised about, some of the stuff. Well, these are all public meetings. Everybody in this room has the opportunity to go to these meetings, to give their input, and to let folks know what they think and what they believe the right course of action is. I don't think there's any debate here on whether we need a new fire station. I mean, all you have to do is go down there and visit it. Look at the old station. It was built back, what, 60s?
75.
75, okay. I think that debate, is over. We need a new fire station. The question is, how do we do it? How do we do it, in a smart and economical way? I think we do that by following the capital planning process. You do it, it has to be logical, and, it has to be done, so it makes sense in the, the overall financial situation of the town. I really, I vowed when I got out of sitting up there that, I was done. I wasn't going to put my 2 cents worth in. My wife will say, I told you so, but that's a different story. I really think that, we need to approve this project. You need to listen to the people that have been studying this for over a year. Not only do it for the town, do it for the firefighters, however you want to put it, but I really would urge everybody to approve this, so thank you.
This is the last point right here. I'm sorry, she's the last one.
Thank you. First, I want to thank the fire department for all that they do, and we know that you should be safe and in a good location and be able to take care of us as you do now. I have a lot of questions. I'm not going to go through all the questions. I'm just going to make some statements very quickly. I'm sure we do need a new fire station. We need a new town hall. We need a lot of new things, maybe even a police station soon. I think we're taking two things, a very large project, which I'd like to see if we could pare it down. I know other towns have gone through this and done it in a few years at a time and pared it down to be able to be something that was a little bit better for our tax dollars. The location at Pierce, with a former gas station, I think we're going to find big problems there, and I don't think it should be there. I'd like to find another location for that. It bears questions and it bears thought, because this is a big expense, $22 million plus, and that doesn't even count operating costs from the years after that. And our tax dollars are already getting more difficult for me to pay for. So I'm just saying I think it really bears a lot of thought before we just jump into it. Thank you.
Okay, we've had plenty of time to have our questions answered. We got the feedback from the various boards and committees as far as their input. So we're prepared to vote on Article 20. This is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $3,500,000 to acquire land located at and known as 10 Monroe Street and 61 through 65 West Main Street, shown as parcels 7, 9, and 10 on Northborough Assessors Map 63, and containing approximately 3.97 acres, and pay for related site costs, owner's project manager services, and architectural services for a new fire station, and to meet said appropriation, the following unexpended amounts for money totaling $1,383,451 that were initially borrowed to finance capital projects that are now complete and for which no further liability remains be transferred, and the amount of $2,116,548 be raised by borrowing in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, 7-1, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, provided, however, that the appropriation under this article shall be contingent upon a successful debt exclusion vote under the provisions of Proposition 2.5, so called, at the May 2019 town election, and further, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to execute all documents and take all action necessary to accomplish said acquisition. And dates of approval for these appropriations: April 23rd, 2012, warrant Article 31, Lincoln Street School feasibility, $16,304. April 28th, 2014, warrant Article 19, Lincoln Street School, $1,367,147, for a total repurposed fund amount of $1,383,451. Boy, that's a mouthful. This requires a 2/3 vote, so please hold your tickets up so I can see everything well. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed? I declare that Article 20 has passed by the 2/3 vote. Article 21, please. But folks, don't leave so early. We've got the property tax exclusions.
The effluent tank in your backyard. Question number 1.
Oh, we got a quorum. No, I don't think so.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Campbell, are you ready?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $8,000 from the Community Preservation Fund Historic Reserves to the Northborough Historic District Commission for the purchase and installation of 2 interpretive signs to identify significant historical sites.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
I second.
Yes, please.
Good evening, John Campbell, 29 Spruce Hill Drive, and a member of the Community Preservation Committee. So, everybody awake? Good, good. So tonight we're going to go through Articles 21 to 26. They deal with this year's recommendations for the spending of the community preservation funds. As a reminder, these funds are provided by the 1.5 surcharge along with state matching funds that we get. And to date, with the CPA in Northborough, we've accumulated over $2.2 million in state matching funds. Of those, of this year's revenue, we expect to have about $562,000 to allocate. And as a reminder, by law, we must allocate at least 10% to open space initiatives, 10% to affordable housing, and 10% to historical preservation. The remaining 70% we can choose to allocate among those projects or recreational projects, or to bank them in the reserve accounts. We have a total of $762,000 in reserves available on top of the $562 estimated revenue. So I'll emphasize all the articles you're going to look at tonight are covered by our reserves or the incoming revenue and state matching money, no additional taxes added. I put together this slide here to show you a little bit where we've gone with CPA in Northborough. And it tells you where some of the funds have gone and what we have to spend going forward. Not all the projects are listed here, but you can kind of see by the distribution, we've invested a lot in the open space, common lands, and recreational properties in town, and a lot in historic preservation. A couple of those things we're going to talk about in just a minute, White Cliffs being one of them. You'll see in the area of affordable housing, that's why we're going to be mentioning that in tonight's articles to try to add to what we're doing in town for affordable housing properties. The uncommitted reserves, you're going to hear a couple times in my articles about the unreserved fund. What that means is these are funds we got in for CPA that have not yet been allocated to one of the three core areas. That gives us the flexibility to spend them over any of the three areas or any recreation projects that come up. And it's a policy that the committee has adopted to give us the best flexibility going forward. An update on a previous article you voted on the last 3 years, Town Common, finally happening, okay? Finally happening. Construction's going to start, the contract has been bid, and we expect to see it over the summer. Hopefully by fall it'll be complete. There'll be more coming out on this. You're looking at one slide. It's a brief overview of the design. Remember that when this is complete, we get reimbursed $215,000 from a national park grant that we previously applied for. You can't get it until you're finished, so we'll finally get that. That will go back into the reserves of CPA for future programs.
Oh, no, not zones.
Now, one other picture I wanted to show you. This is the conceptual design for the War Memorial portion of the Town Common. This will be behind the current statue, and really looks pretty nice, and will be part of the 1/3 of the overall plan. So I just wanted to throw that in there. You're not voting on any more Town Common money tonight. We took care of that before. Okay, so to the article in question. Article 21 is the first of two dealing with historic signs and markers in town. You start to see a lot of these go up, and they're really very interesting as you walk around. You get to read quickly about some of the history in town that you might not have normally known about. So I think they're quite economical. This article is asking for $8,000 for two exhibits, really, that deal with our burial grounds in town. The first will be for Howard Street. It'll be replacing the exhibit that's there now. If you've ever walked through Howard Street, there's a kiosk. It was built by an original Boy Scout project. It's rotting now, needs updating, so this will replace and enhance that. And then at the Brigham Street burial ground that many don't even know about, there'll be a sign depicting the history of it and some information on who we think was buried there from our original settlers. So $8,000 for the historic markers is Article 21.
Thank you. May I hear from the Appropriations Committee on Article 21, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. Are there any questions on Article 21? Hearing no questions, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $8,000 from the Community Preservation Fund Historic Reserves to the Northborough Historic District Commission for the purchase and installation of two interpretive signs to identify significant historical sites. This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 21 passes.
Thank you.
Article 22, please.
I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $5,800 from the Community Preservation Fund Historic Reserves to the Northborough Historic District Commission for the purchase and installation of two historic markers.
Motion has been made and seconded.
Okay, as I mentioned, this is the second of two articles dealing with historic signs, if you will. And in this case, there's going to be one proposed at the site of the old Cyrus Gale General Store, which happens to be also the site of new affordable housing apartments that you may have heard about. You're going to hear about that in a minute. And then also the Cold Harbor Brook area, highlighting the original bridge construction, which has actually now been updated in a historically sensitive way, and tell you some history about that.
Thank you. And may I hear from Appropriations Committee on Article 22, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. Are there any questions on Article 22? Hearing no questions, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $5,800 from the Community Preservation Fund Historic Reserves to Northborough Historic District Commission for the purchase and installation of 2 historic markers. This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 22 passes. Article 23, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $150,000 with $93,000 from the Community Preservation Fund Unreserved Fund and $57,000 from the Community Preservation Fund revenues to the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation for the purpose of the creation of affordable housing.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded.
So Article 23 adds to continued success in campaigns in town regarding additional affordable housing properties and the great work that our Northborough Affordable Housing Commission, the corporation, NAHC, has done to support those projects. The additional funds will add to their small reserves that are building toward the next project. I want to talk for a minute about the project just completed, which was the apartments completed at 33, 35, 37, 39 Main Street. That's right next to the Trinity Church, or as I mentioned before, one of which was the old Cyrus Scale building. With the partnership they developed with Habitat for Humanity, they were able to create 4 brand-new apartments. They've been completed. The applicants have been chosen. People are moving in. It's a really great success story, building on the one they did for the 4 senior affordable housing apartments a few years ago that this body voted into law. So I would ask your support for the continued development of affordable housing options in Northborough.
Thank you. May I hear from Appropriations on Article 23, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
And may I hear from the Financial Planning Committee, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Financial Planning Committee unanimously supports approval of this committee, of this
Thank you.
article.
Any questions on Article 23? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $150,000 with $93,000 from the Community Preservation Unreserved Fund and $57,000 from the Community Preservation Fund revenues to the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation for the purpose of the creation of affordable housing. This is also a majority vote. All in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 23 passes. Article 24, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $297,070, with $233,770 from the Community Preservation Unreserved Fund and $57,000 from the Community Preservation Fund revenues to the Northborough Department of Public Works for construction and installation of electrical improvements, lighting package, and regarding regrading and restoration of field associated with Phase 2 of the project for the replacement of field lighting at the Robert Milliken Middle School.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded.
All right, well, I botched the reading of that pretty bad, but the idea here is this is Phase 2 of an article you approved last year for new lighting at the Milliken Middle School field. The old lights cracked and fell down in a storm. It was a major safety hazard. It came up quite quickly, but luckily, because of the reserves that we built, we were able to easily approve this project. Last year, the money, part of this year was used for the engineering study and the upgrading of the electrical services. This segment will actually install the light towers. There would end up being 6 new light towers around the perimeter of the major part of the field that's used for football and soccer right now. And the idea here, too, is that this field will get used for even more activities going forward. Plus, the lighting will be higher efficiency. It's going to be better for the field, better for the neighbors. Just a good project overall for a very well-used field. So I look for your support on this.
Thank you. Now I hear from Appropriations on Article 24.
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. And may I hear from Financial Planning?
Mr. Moderator, the Financial Planning Committee unanimously supports approval of this article.
Thank you. Are there any questions on Article 24? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $290,770 with $233,770 from the Community Preservation Unreserved Funds and $57,000 from the Community Preservation Fund revenues to the Northborough Department of Public Works for construction and installation of electrical improvements, lighting package, and regrading and restoration of fields associated with Phase 2 of the project for the replacement of the field lighting at Robert Milliken Middle School. Again, a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 24 passes. Article 25, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $239,100 with $57,000 from the Community Preservation Fund revenues and $182,100 from the Community Preservation Unreserved Fund to the Northborough Community Preservation Committee for fiscal year 2020 debt service and expenses associated with acquisition of the property at 167 Main Street.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded.
Well, 167 Main Street is the White Cliffs, and this was the big nut of this year's allocations. You'll recall we approved at town meeting 2016 to buy the building and keep it from demolition, and there's been tremendous town support for this. This is the second of our bond payments to keep the project going and pay for the building. For those that don't know, there's a White Cliffs committee that meets, and these dedicated people are working toward the process of both securing the property, studying its reuse, and ultimately renovating it. I can report from a recent report that came from the committee chair that they've selected an architect, DBVW. They are on board now. They are currently putting the bid together, which is going out next month, to bring in the architectural contractor who will start executing the study, engineering, developing plans, and starting to implement the plans for the actual restoration. I would be remiss if I did not mention at this point one very dedicated volunteer who could not be with us tonight, but without whose enthusiasm and passion this project might never have gotten off the ground, and White Cliffs might never have been restored, and that is Kathleen Polanowitz. I ask for a round of applause. And with that, I ask for your approval of this article to continue the project.
Thank you. May I hear from the Appropriations Committee on Article 25, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
And Financial Planning, please.
Mr. Moderator, the Financial Planning Committee unanimously supports approval of this article.
Are there any questions on Article 25? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $239,100 with $57,000 from the Community Preservation Fund's revenues and $182,100 from the Community Preservation Unreserved Fund to the Northborough Community Preservation Committee for fiscal year 2020 debt service and expenses associated with the acquisition of property at 167 Main Street. This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 25 passes.
Thank you.
Article 26, please.
I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $25,000 from the Community Preservation Fund revenues to the Northborough Community Preservation Committee for expenses associated with the implementation of the Community Preservation Act, including but not limited to clerical assistance, office supplies, property surveys, appraisals, attorney's fees, and other professional services, recording fees, printing, and all other necessary and proper expenses for the fiscal year 2020.
Second. Motion has been made and seconded.
Okay, this is our annual request for operating expenses. We're allowed to allocate up to 5% of the intended revenues, and this is used for appraisals and fees like we just talked about, and has supported all the projects that you've approved previously.
Thank you. May I hear from the Appropriations Committee on Article 26, please?
Mr. Moderator, the Appropriations Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. Are there any questions on Article 26? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to appropriate the sum of $25,000 from the Community Preservation Fund revenues to the Northborough Community Preservation Committee for expenses associated with the implementation of the Community Preservation Act, including but not limited to clerical assistance, office supplies, property surveys, appraisals, attorney's fees, and other professional services, recording fees, printing, and all other necessary and proper expenses for the fiscal year 2020. This is a majority vote. All in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 26 passes. As I look at my watch, we are dangerously close to the hour of 11 p.m. Who's saying one more? You, the one who make. Can you do it fast? Okay. Who's saying that? I can't. Okay. That's a motion.
You don't have to do that. It's before 11.
Right. We have to wait until after 11. We're still good. Okay. So we'll do this right now.
Kelly Marston, 159 Pleasant Street. I move the town vote to amend the Town of Northborough Wetland Bylaw, Section 64020, applicability by adding the text shown as underlined as set forth in the warrant.
Mia McDonald, Conservation Agent for the Town of Northborough Conservation Commission. This article is to request the addition of those three words, isolated, vegetated wetland, and a comma, as shown in red, to the applicability section of the local bylaw. This is a housekeeping issue to more clearly define the resource areas protected by the Northborough Wetlands Bylaw as it was intended in the original writing and subsequent updates. Thank you.
Thank you. May I hear from the Conservation Committee on Article 27?
If I may speak for the Conservation Commission?
Certainly.
They recommend approval of the article.
Okay, thank you. And the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee?
Municipal Code and Bylaws Committee recommends approval.
Thank you. Do we have any questions on Article 27?
Michael Powell, Whitney Street. Could I get a definition of what an isolated vegetated wetland is? And is this going to expand the amount of land that's under the control of the Conservation Commission?
I'll start with the second part of your question first. When the bylaw was written in the 1980s, then revised in 1993 and 1999, the Conservation Commission defined an isolated vegetated wetland as a freshwater wetland, which you can see up there, and it was protected as jurisdictional until late 2015 when someone challenged in writing that definition. The Conservation Commission agreed with the challenge and has since then been working to more clearly define isolated vegetated wetland to make it more legally defensible in their bylaw. So they're currently working on that definition. So they have a draft available, and if you're interested, you can participate in the drafting of that definition. Right now, they're using a definition that they have gotten permission to use from the town of Arlington, where it mostly is defined by similar standards as actually the exact same standards as the state law, where it's vegetation and hydric soils.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing no questions, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to amend the Town of Northborough Wetlands Bylaw, Section 6-04-020, applicability by adding the text shown as underlined as set forth in the warrant. This is a majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed. Article 27 passes.
Okay.
Do we have
It's 11 o'clock. It's time to go home.
I've just been informed that we have reached the 11 o'clock hour. Typically what happens is I entertain motions to adjourn until tomorrow evening, or another motion would be to suspend the rules and have all of us be bloody-eyed and teary-eyed tomorrow morning.
No, let's go home.
Move we adjourn.
There's been a motion to adjourn. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your...
Until 7:30 at this place tomorrow.
Adjourn till 7:30 at this exact same location. I don't have the longitude and latitude, but it's here. So all those in favor of adjournment? Those opposed? The motion has passed. I have one quick announcement I'd like to make before you go. First of all, thank you all for being very civil and participative. I think it's been a good meeting so far. Also want to announce that the Northborough Master Plan Steering Committee invites you to take the final master plan survey. And you can do that by going to the website that I think is at Northborough's, the town Northborough's website. And the deadline for this is April 26th, so it's right around the corner. There'll be free prizes for the first 100 people here tomorrow evening.
If we're lucky, that's going to take, because everyone's going to get up and be very